Good evening, and welcome to the South Burlington Development Review Board of
I haven't started town meeting TV yet, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Recording in progress.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And welcome to the South Burlington Development Review Board. Why is there an echo?
Yeah, try it now.
Thank you. For October 3rd, 2023, just want to remind you all that this is the Development Review Board. If you want to be here, we're glad and welcome. If you're interested in the Planning Commission, that is meeting currently on the 3rd floor. This is the Development Review Board. My name is Dawn Philibert. I'm the chair of the board, and I'd like to introduce the other members of the board. Frank Kochman, John Muscatelli, Quinn Mann, and we have Mark Baer, another board member who's attending virtually, and our staff, Marla Keene and Marty Gillies. Thank you for being here. This meeting is being recorded. There's a number of ways to participate. Many of you are sitting in the auditorium, attending personally, and if you are here and you want to be considered an interested party for any future action, please make sure you sign in with your contact information on the back table. If you are attending virtually, which is another way of attending, please make sure that you send Marla Keene, and I'll give you her address in a minute, your contact information so that you can be considered an interested party should you ever want to be in the future. And similarly, if you are on the phone participating, you can send Marla an email with your contact information. Actually, if you're attending virtually, you can put that information in the contact box.
In the chat.
Pardon, the chat box, sorry, thank you. Marla's email address is mkeene@southburlingtonvt.gov. And when we have lots of people who want to participate, what we're going to ask you to do is raise your hand, especially for those of you who are attending virtually. We're going to mute you throughout the hearing, but if you want to be recognized when the time is right, raise your hand and we will call upon you. Let's see. Okay, let's go to our emergency evacuation procedures. In the event of an emergency, you can exit one of the 2 back doors in each corner, either go left or right, and you will be outside of the building. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in the order of agenda items tonight?
No.
Hearing none. Are there any announcements?
The city council has advertised for new DRB members. So we are looking for a new DRB member to fill out a full complement of 7. If you are interested or you know people who might be interested, please send your application. The information is right on our website.
Thanks, Marla. Are there any comments and questions from the public that are not related to the agenda? Hearing none, we will move on to the first project. Give me 1 second here. Okay. This is the first project, SD 23-12, is a master plan sketch plan application of Eric Farrell for an existing approximately 105-acre lot developed with 2 single-family homes and 6 unoccupied or accessory structures. The master plan consists of placing approximately 74 acres into permanent conservation, conveying approximately 1 acre to abutters, and constructing 124 additional homes in buildings ranging from single-family to 12 units on 28.25 acres at 1195 Shelburne Road. Who is here for the applicant? Is it Eric, did you say?
Eric.
Eric, thank you. And
My name is Michael Busher. I'm a local architect with TJ Boyle Associate.
Can you poke the button on your mic? The light will turn from dull green to bright green. And the same with you, Eric.
perfect.
Does that work? There we go.
Thank you, Michael. And
I'm Amanda Markey. I'm a landscape designer at TJ Boyle Associates.
thank
Madam
you.
Chair,
Yes,
excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm going to have to recuse myself from this entire application. I want to say just a word or two. This is not a business conflict. That would be an easy call. I'm sorry, frankly, to leave. It's a big project. I'm sorry to leave my colleagues with extra burden. It's personal conflict. I have very, very dear friends who I think with some certainty are going to be on one side of this project. On the other hand, we have an applicant, an old adversary. Then he became a friend of me, and ultimately I came to respect him as a reasonably responsible developer. I
Paid
feel
him to
like
say that.
I feel like the preacher at a Mary and Sam wedding. I can't do it. If the LDRs were black and if the 300 pages of the LDR were black and white and didn't leave such wide areas of discretion, I've always been confident in my ability to navigate that, even when there've been former clients up there. But I can't do it in this case. I'm very sorry, but
okay. I appreciate your
recuse.
honesty. And are there any other recusals or?
So, Board Member Stephanie Wyman is not here tonight because she said that she was also recused. I wanted to take a chance to talk to her about that. She may not always be recused in the future. We'll have to find
Okay.
out what her
Issue is,
perceived conflict
right.
is, and if it's not truly a conflict, maybe we'll see her back in the future.
Good, okay. So, I don't have to swear you in because this is a sketch plan, but as you probably know, I'm sure you've been through this in the past, we have a staff report that I know you've reviewed, we've all reviewed it, and it has a number of questions or issues that we need to discuss with you and receive testimony from you about. And we'll go through this, but I'd like to open with asking you to give us an overview of your project, starting kind of with a broad brush and getting more specific.
Do you want to just mention the public comment period at the end?
Yes, sure. We will have public comment after we get through the staff report. Okay,
So I think I'll give you a little history, and then Michael will explain the evolution of the plan.
is your mic on?
Yeah.
Is my mic on? I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, just for the record, I missed Frank already. So this is you know where the property is. It's on, fronts on Shelburne Bay. My cousin David owns it, my first cousin, and he's lived there it's been in the family about 80 years. He's lived there most of his life. It's 105 acres. There was an inn on there several years ago, back in the 40s and 50s, that was partially destroyed by a hurricane that came through in the early 50s, interestingly enough. The main house burned down in 1962. The mansion that was there was built a long time ago. Anyway, so David lives there in the single-family home, the same place he's been for decades. And he's trying to do some estate planning and thought that the time has come to try and figure out what's the best long-term vision for the property, rather than just leave it. He's got 3 adult children that work in his business being Faro Distributing. So we flirted with a plan several years ago that had, interestingly enough, almost 400 units that met the ordinance at the time. We didn't pull the trigger. We're beating ourselves up about that now. But anyway, things work out the way they're supposed to. So when Mike, I did ask Marla, I went to one of the meetings. Marla's had several meetings, I think, with Mike and Amanda. I did ask her if she had an English version of the ordinance that I could read, and she said no, that doesn't exist. So I was a little challenged reading your ordinance, and I think it's a very well-written staff report, but it's hard to follow that as well, even though I've been doing this for too long. And so we thought that the conservation PUD with a nested traditional neighborhood development was the most appropriate, way to go about this. And there's a lot of environmental challenges on the property, as you probably know, and will experience if we do a site visit. And just for your information, I've met a couple of times with the neighbors on Holmes Road Extension, and some of them are here, and I'm sure we'll meet again. And I invited them. They didn't need my invitation, but I invited them to come to the meeting and offer whatever they wanted to about how they thought the property, how this should all go. And we would certainly like to end up with a plan that meets the ordinance and works for the neighbors and works for my cousin for his long-term planning purposes. So that's kind of the history. I'll let Mike kind of dig into exactly, how we ended up with the layouts that we did and the proposal, because I'm not articulate enough to say how it meets your regulations. We like to think that it does, but I'll turn it over to this guy.
Thank you.
Great. Again, Michael Busher with TJ Boyle Associates. So just to orient people, this is not a property that a lot of people notice because it is pretty buried back behind other development and not a lot of public accessibility to it. So if you're looking at the plans, the project's bounded on the east side by the railroad tracks that heads north-south. There at one time was a portion that extended all the way out to Route 7, which was referred to the inroad, and that was sold and combined with a current project that's in front of the DRB through
Could you speak up a little, please, or pull your mic in a little closer?
Yep. So that piece, the inroad piece, is now, I believe, currently in front of the DRB as part of a Larkin development proposal, which has partially been built out already. On the west side, the project is partially bounded by Lake Champlain through the center portion. To the northern portion, it's bounded by Muddy Brook. And on the Potash Brook, sorry, my mistake. And on the southern end, Holmes Road accesses it, and that's the main access to the property right now. South of Holmes Road, it extends all the way to Bartlett Bay Road, but it doesn't extend all the way out to the lake. It's intersected by existing development, existing single-family homes that line the lake. A portion of that area is accessed from the end of Holmes Road by an extension, a private road called Holmes Road Extension. Would you be able to change to sheet L1? So L1 is the existing conditions plan. It shows all the environmental constraints and hazards for the project. The most open area is the open field south of Holmes Road. And you can see it's the area that isn't encumbered with all sorts of hatches and colors and everything else. It's that white field area. There's habitat block that surround that open field, including a portion of the woods to the west side of it, and the orange represents Class 3 wetlands. There's a portion of out parcels. When you get to the end of Holmes Road, there's an out parcel that somewhat divides this property into what we refer to the southern portion and the northern portion. On the northern portion is where Mr. Farrell's house currently exists. And then the red hatch represents Class 2 wetlands. Again, more Class 3 wetlands with the orange hatch. There's also lake encumbrances, steep slopes, more habitat block, river corridor. So there's a lot of different components that make development challenging in the northern area. Part of this project started when not Mr. Farrell next to me, but the owner, was looking to just do a simple subdivision on the northern portion for, I think it was 4 lots. They approached the city planning, and it was determined that that did not meet the regulations, and we started to have a conversation about the different PUD options that would be the most logical avenue for development for the project. In particular, a conservation PUD was discussed, and we looked at doing a conservation PUD just on the northern portion of it. However, due to access and other constraints, to do a conservation PUD on the northern portion, we would, if you understand the regulations, you're restricted to single family and duplexes because you're using the regulations with the underlying zoning districts for the conservation PUD. We were not able to meet a minimum density that's prescribed through that process. So we took a step back further and we tried to understand what the best way to meet this, to meet the essence of the land development regulations while honoring both the surrounding neighborhoods as well as the property owner, which is where we came to our current proposal. So if you can flip to the next slide. So what we are proposing, actually, if you can go to yep, L2 right there, exactly. Yeah, that doesn't show the whole property, but it shows essentially the pieces that we need. So what we're doing is we are proposing a conservation PUD for the entire project. Within the conservation PUD, we are nesting a traditional neighborhood development to meet our density requirements. So the conservation PUD requires that 70% of the property is conserved, and then the rest is dedicated partially towards development, but also roads and other encumbrances that can't be counted towards the conservation piece of the development. North of Holmes Road, there is access issues. We have a single road coming in. Several years ago, when we entered when we were working with the city for our development plans, we were contemplating a additional crossing of the railroad at the in-road, what we refer to the in-road. Exactly, thank you for pointing that out. It was very unlikely we were going to be able to get, there is an existing access at the in-road, and it allows access as a residential driveway. It became apparent that it was not going to be possible to upgrade that crossing to something more substantial. So that severely limits the ability to do a heavy amount of development on top of the environmental constraints, and still we're looking to get a value out of this property. So as of right now, there's 3 single-family lots proposed on the northern portion, which is part of the conservation PUD. Lots, what we refer to as lots 2, 3, and 4. Lots 2, 3, and 4 have a second piece, which would be a conservation component. So lot 2 encompasses the existing residential structure. Lot 3 actually includes the remaining structures from the inn property, which was the reception hall, and there is a boathouse. And lot 4 actually has a more modern barn structure, but the idea would be that there would be single-family homes built on lots 3 and 4. And each of these lots, 2, 3, and 4, have a conservation lot that is separate from the development lot, but would be owned by the same owner. So the concept is that there would be 3 property owners on that northern portion of the property. To meet our density requirements, we nested a PUD, a T&D, planned unit development, at the end of Holmes Road. And that incorporates the concepts of having a centrally oriented, walkable, compact, development that it uses smart growth principles. It has a diversity of housing. So we have a total of 122 units proposed as a part of that T&D neighborhood. It includes a mix of single-family detached homes, duplexes, townhouses, what's referred to as small multiplexes, which is four up to 4 units, and medium multiplexes, which is up to 12 units. The medium multiplexes are only allowed at transitional portions of the project, so where we're up against a Velco right-of-way, the railroad, the next portion of development to the south is a wastewater treatment facility. There's additional commercial development on the other side of the railroad track, so that's what we're considering our transitional area. The townhouses are restricted for the center of the neighborhood. So there's quite a bit of nuance to the layout and meeting the regulations to comply with the T&D neighborhood. Thank you. So you can see the darker orange are the medium multiplexes, the blue are the small multiplexes, the purple are townhouses, the yellow duplexes, and the pink are the single-family homes. In addition to the residential units, we also have a component of civic space, and for the underlying zoning district, civic space is mainly allowed in the form of parks, and they need to have program associated with them, such as playground, pavilion, walking paths, benches. You can also have trails, paths, things like that to meet the civic space requirement. The other component is a 5% mixed use component or non-residential. Currently, we were thinking that would be live work units. There's basically two ways we can accommodate that, either through a live work unit, and we were assuming that those would be townhouse units, which is shown on this plan. It could also be a cottage commercial, so like a dedicated lot, which would be restricted to a single residential unit if that was provided that way, which we have been considering as well. So if you can go to the next plan. I think this probably gives the best impression of the overall intention and character of the neighborhood. We laid it out with the intention because there are existing residents that are located along Holmes Road extension. So we laid out the road on the outside of the neighborhood with the anticipation that we would relocate the existing Holmes Road extension further away from those units because it's very close to those homes right now. Give them a buffer, reconnect to the new roadway, and emphasize the traditional neighborhood development concept of alleyways with the units that we're providing. So that would mean most of the traffic would be diverted away from those existing homes. It would give them a new front yard. It would put the single families in close proximity to those other single families, and the larger and multifamily units would then intensify as you got further away from those other units. We'll talk about this later, but we have been meeting with those the neighbors in the adjacent properties, so we may be coming back with an updated sketch plan, and part of that would be our discussion here tonight.
There's one thing I wanted to mention. The east-west section of the proposed street is actually in the exact location of where the current dirt road is, or gravel road, and then the north-south section has actually been moved east, quite a bit east of the existing road. So,
Right.
so the folks that front on that north-south section, we did propose to transfer some of the woods and land to them, enlarging their lots. But we didn't do the same thing on the along the north-south section. But we've had a couple of meetings with them, and it's our intention to try and figure out a way that works for everybody, so.
Okay. Is Shelburne Road there?
Shelburne Road,
So just to orient you, the
Oh,
lake is to
okay.
the left.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Lake is to the left, the road tracks are to the right, and Shelburne Road parallels the railroad tracks
Right.
further to the
Okay,
right.
thank
I
you.
don't know if this is the right time, I'll just mention this. I think the neighbors have an interest in us leaving their road exactly the way it is and building the new public street, inwards of that, but separate. And I wasn't sure myself when I met with them last, which was last Saturday, whether that would be allowed. And I think Marla has indicated, I think from a technical standpoint, it's probably allowed. And for the record, I think we're okay with that. If the DRB thinks that's appropriate, it would require us to tweak the plan some and, to accommodate that. So.
Well, as you know, the whole purpose of a sketch plan is kind of a high-level overview of the proposed project to give you a sense of where the board is, might have some concerns or some suggestions or whatever. So that's fine.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, boss.
Oh, all good. So other things just to be aware of, there is a Velco transmission line right away that parallels the railroad tracks to the right or to the east side of this neighborhood. Back in 2006, 2007, or earlier, when we were working on this, there was a property transaction that occurred between Allenwood and the city to allow access all the way down to Bartlett Bay Road. So what you don't see here is that road continues to the south or to the bottom of the sheet and connects all the way to Bartlett Bay Road, which gives us our two accesses, which are required for the densities that we're discussing here, the required densities for the property. Trying to think if there's anything of consideration that we should be discussing. So back to the rendering again, the civic spaces, there's a series of green spaces that were laid out through the neighborhood that were meant to create somewhat of an organization to the space. So most of the units back or front right directly to green space. We would envision a variety of uses in those areas, including a playground, picnic shelter, garden spaces for the multifamily units. And there's definitely opportunity for recreational paths and more passive recreational amenities throughout the site. I think if you see in the staff notes, we are showing a recreation path extending south from the T&D to Bartlett Bay Road and we always knew that there's going to be opportunities, and there was a larger discussion to have about how that was going to connect into the larger recreational path that is planned for this area, and that's something that we're very open to, and we have put some additional thought onto it. Did you want to say something?
Well, just staying on the rec path, I think our notion is that we would extend the rec path from Holmes Road extension, west side of the tracks, all the way to through the neighborhood, all the way to Bartlett's Bay Road, and then going north from Holmes Road extension, likely through the Velco right away. We think the path is better suited on the west side of the railroad tracks because that's where the ground is level and much easier to navigate. And we think, although we'd have to talk to Velco about it, that Velco does not have an exclusive right of way through there. So we think we can put a rec path in that. It's just a mowed meadow now. And that would take us to the farm crossing at the old Inn Road. I've had some preliminary discussions with Joe Larkin about where we go from there. It's pretty easy to get up to Fayette Drive. I know that there's a long range. I think there's a long range plan to actually go farther to the north, all the way over to the brook, and then cross into what's the name of that neighborhood?
Orchard?
Huh?
Are you talking
On
about?
the other side of the brook there.
Oh,
Queen City Park.
Queen
Yeah,
City Park.
although I think you'd need the Army Corps of Engineers to design the bridge that would get you there, but it's possible, I suppose theoretically, it's possible to have an easement that would go all the way, follow the railroad tracks on the west side and go all the way to the north, but it gets, the grades get very challenging.
Yep.
I'm not sure that's really feasible, but won't happen in my lifetime. So maybe getting to the inroad and then circling up to Fayette Drive is probably the best way for people to, if they wanted to, get over to Hannaford's without navigating Shelburne Road, if they're on their bikes, that might be the best way to go about it. So, but, we'd have to work that through with Joe as well. And you're seeing him next week, so. Trying to think of what else. If the outcome of this meeting is support for leaving the Holmes Road extension in place the way it is, then obviously we would tweak the traditional neighborhood development, and we might come back with a somewhat different mix of housing types, unit types, and maybe a slightly different density depending on how it all worked out. So I think we're pretty open-minded about it.
Okay.
The other elephant in the room is or maybe the biggest elephant in the room is the fact that on the northern piece, there's a section of the shorefront that's designated, I don't know officially what it's called, public park, future public park, or whatever, all about lake access. And my understanding of the process is when we come back for master plan, you ultimately have to send us to the council, and then the council's got to decide whether the city wants to pony up to buy that parcel. I, frankly, don't see that happening, but that's the process that we have to go through, and we understand that. What would be the thing that's not really clear to me is how minimally can we materials can we submit before we get sent to the council. We don't really want to spend a lot of money on engineering just to have it go to the council, and the council decide that they won Powerball and would like to buy that property. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to pretend how that process will work out, but so that's one thing that Marla can advise us as to, how can we get into the process without spending scads of money before we know what the outcome is.
Yeah. I think that's definitely a good topic to talk about later. Let me think about whether that makes sense to have as part of this sketch plan conversation,
That's
or if
fine.
it makes more sense to have
Yeah.
with staff. Because I think the board does have some say in it. Ultimately, if the applicant doesn't want to provide the proposal, the planned public park from the official map, the board has to, this is staff comment number 3, so we're kind of jumping ahead. Or maybe it's staff comment number 4. The board has to deny the project. And the board tries to issue denials that are comprehensive so that, you couldn't appeal if this were different projects. Say you had a house that you were proposing on a single family lot and it was 1 story too tall. The board tries to issue their decision in the affirmative with a but for kind of clause, so that if it goes to the court can't say, oh, no, it's fine. Because maybe there's some other elements that aren't fine. So the board would have to kind of decide, okay, do they want to issue a full decision with, but for this thing, or does the board want to just say, well, we didn't really review very much because it's dead in the water.
I was a little
so
confused about that when I read the comment.
Yeah,
but we
so
can-
let's circle back to that after this
Yeah.
conversation. And, it may be ultimately the applicant's decision, but I think I'd appreciate the board's, thoughts
Okay.
on it.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to get into the weeds prematurely on it, only to say that if it's going to go to the council, we'd like to go as quickly and as inexpensively as possible, and let them make their decision.
Yeah,
That's
that's
on
reasonable.
behalf of the city.
Yeah. Okay.
Then we'll know what to do.
So just kind of big picture timing kind of thing for this hearing. I really appreciate your going through what you just reviewed, because it's a complicated, big project. I think what we will do is start going through the staff comments, and we'll go till about 8 o'clock. And then we're going to need to schedule a time for you to come back. And that way we'll have some public comment tonight, so we get some input from the public. So let's go ahead and dive into or continue looking at the staff comments.
Sure.
We've already talked about one, which was the overview, and thank you for that. So there's a suggestion that we schedule a site visit for the board to come and kind of walk the property and get a better sense of what it's like and what some of the obstacles are that you're dealing with and whatever. So are you willing to do that?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
We'll schedule that with Marla, presumably. Yep.
Perfect. Great, thanks.
So,
Staff comment number 3.
so due to the complexities of the project, it's asking whether we would come forward with just a master plan application next, or if we would move forward with master plan in combination with preliminary plat or site plan. And because of the complexities with this project and the issue of the official plan or map, we would be coming forward with only the master plan.
Okay. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Number 4, this is regarding future submissions, and I'll read you part of this. A narrative description of the characteristics that they're committing to carrying forward throughout the master plan. But that's a little bit down the road.
Okay. Yeah, and I assume some of this stuff, if it's not really clear to us, we'll ask staff about it. Yeah.
Yes.
So it sort of also relies upon the DRB to providing some guidance to what that narrative would be. Do you have specific components that you would like to see, or?
So what this is intended to be is like, you present a project and the board says, that looks great. And you're like, but this isn't our real project. This is like an example. And so you need to say, what about the example you're committing to? And what about the example is something that might change?
Right. Okay, so I understand that. And, you know, our intention was the proposal that you're seeing is what we thought was the best plan. Since we came up with that design and with our conversations with the neighbors, that might change now. So we do want to probably get through sketch with what we think is the ideal layout and plan. So
Well, and you'll hear from us about concerns we have, and
Sure. Okay.
I'll give you a heads up. Comment number 5, this is about phasing and timing. Wondering what your thoughts are about that.
Well, if I understand the question, generally, we want to fully permit the entire project. So, in other words, we don't want to, I don't think we want to do a master plan and then do components over time. I think we'd get the thing fully permitted, so we're fully vested before we make an investment in infrastructure. And then if the phasing question has anything to do with how it would get built out, I think the South Meadow part, the 120 units, a little bit driven by market conditions, but I think our intent would be to probably move right along and build it out. I can't predict when single-family homes would be built on the other 2 lots.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Comment number 6. I can't read through my own writing. 6, yes. This is regarding the access roads and which ones will be retained. And you alluded to that a little bit in your overview, but could you maybe respond
The
to
existing
this?
roads,
Pardon me?
the existing road network?
Yeah, what do you plan to retain?
Well, those roads are pretty historic. They've been there for several decades. And our intention would be to retain them. They will end up being private drives to the 2 home sites, and so for historic reasons we like to retain them. There's one connection between where the roads loop together that we're going to disconnect. Other than that, we also think because they meander through wetlands, we think it would be more disruptive to the wetlands to try and remove them. or relocate them or provide a different access. So we think the cleanest thing to do, they're in pretty good shape, is to just keep them just the way they are.
Okay.
And just to add some nuance to that, there would be roads that would be utilized, and those roads were taken out of the conservation calculations. So there's a road that crosses at the end road that accesses those two single-family houses, and there's actually a portion of that that is proposed because we think that's the most direct access and would have the least environmental impact. So that's removed from the conservation calculation. There's an existing driveway that accesses the current residence. That is not a historic road, per my understanding.
Is that gated off now?
It's
Yes,
gated off
okay.
right now.
Yeah.
That one is also removed from the conservation calculations. There are some gravel roads that would go away. So there is specifically a series of very historic roads that have cobblestone arch bridges and walls, and it was all associated with the inn. And those are the ones that we feel should not be counted against the conservation calculations, but at the same time, we feel it would be disadvantage to remove those from an environmental and a historical standpoint.
And they're part of the character of that property. And
Right.
you'll see when you go do a site visit, they're pretty scenic, and it'd be great to keep them.
Would they be maintained?
They would be maintained by, yeah, oh yeah, no, David has maintained this property meticulously for all of his life, and yes, they would be maintained. They would be used. They would provide the access to those two single-family lots.
No.
What do you mean, no?
No.
Which road are you talking about?
So the ones that we're talking about that would not be counted towards the conservation,
Yeah,
they would not be regularly used. They wouldn't be plowed during the winter time. They probably would be maintained from a deterioration standpoint, but they would provide access into the conservation areas, but they would not have daily use. Anything that we would have daily use on, we have taken out of the conservation calculations.
Okay.
So
So I would say that's something maybe the board should provide a little feedback on after a site visit.
Okay, sure, yeah.
yeah.
It's hard to envision what it's really like. I think we need
oh,
to
it's
get out there.
impossible to, yeah, you'd need to see the place.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, thank you. The next issue is number 7, and this is regarding the conservation PUD. I'm going to read this. Staff recommends the board ask the applicant to demonstrate that their proposed conservation PUD boundaries are compatible with clustered development and protection of contiguous resource areas.
So we are meeting the majority of our density requirements through a T&D development. It's very approximate to utilities, roads, other development, all the check marks that when you look at the conservation development standards are listed. We also have 3 single-family lots, including the existing residence. That is a matter of there's a mechanism. We're conserving 70% of this parcel. It's a large and it's a very valuable parcel. So those 3 single-family lots are the mechanism that allow the conservation PUD to happen. Because of the constraints, because of the Velco right-of-way and the railroad, there are certain dynamics that need to be paid attention to in order to make those viable lots. So we think that it meets the intent because it's not intense development. They're just 3 single-family lots. And it is the mechanism which allows this conservation PUD to occur.
Any questions from the board? Mark, are you with us?
I'm with you,
Okay, good.
following right along.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
All right, number 8. I'm also going to read this. Staff also recommends the board ask the applicant to describe the proposed driveway to remain on lots 2, 3, and 4 and demonstrate that their proposed conservation plan will result in adequate protection of the conserved lands, taking into consideration that the conserved lands are proposed to be divided into 4 lots. We've kind of alluded to this, but I'm wondering what else you might want to say about this.
I mean, again, we you know, they're 2 separate driveways. One will access a single unit. The other driveway will be shared to access 2 units. I know other similar elements like recreational paths are allowed within the conservation areas, so we don't feel as if that those drives will create a burden or disconnect the conservation areas.
Okay, questions? Okay, the next comment is, I can't read my own writing. The intent of the 3 building lots. Staff recommends the board ask the applicant to describe the intent of these building lots. Okay.
I'm not sure I understand the question, other than the long-term intent is to build single-family homes on those lots, whether they will be for family members or third parties hasn't been determined,
Okay,
but there'll be single-family home sites.
okay. Number 10.
Sorry, can I just,
sure.
a question for Marla. Do we have another projects that has utilized the conservation PUD before?
No.
Okay, so, okay, I'm just.
So we're the
thinking
guinea
through.
pig.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm just zeroing in on just to comment 7 of the clustered development piece. Obviously, you have a lot of clustering on the south side of the property, and then these 3 single-family homes. So I don't have a full thought on it, but staff has obviously highlighted it with the comments, and since we don't have another example of this being utilized before, it does seem like those 3 single-family homes are less clustered than the majority of your development.
I think a site visit is going to be
Yeah.
very revealing, and I think you'll understand why we only have 3 single families on the north side.
Yeah.
It's a very challenged piece of property from a development standpoint.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Quinn. Number 10, how are the lots, let me see, consistent with the siting requirements for development areas? If not, the board asks the applicant to demonstrate how the proposed building lots 2, 3, and 4 are consistent with the siting requirements for development areas. Can you help us understand what you're getting at, Marla?
Sure. If you look above, this section is headed development area, and standards for location and development area include adjacency to existing infrastructure and existing and planned development, and minimizing encroachments into protected natural resource areas. So in that context, as Erica said, this is historic inn property, and there is existing infrastructure, paved driveways and culverts. It says here that building lots 2, 3, and 4 do need to be modified as discussed pertaining to Article 12. So there are some additional natural resources that need to be taken out of those building lots. And so that modification needs to be done in a way that takes advantage and more complies with the development area rather than less, or equally complies, I suppose. So this comment's asking how the selection of the locations for building lots 2, 3, and 4 is consistent with the standards for a location and development area.
So I think some of the items that you mentioned, that they are part of an existing road network. It is part of a pre-disturbed portion of the project. They're proposed where all the existing buildings were that were removed less than 10 years ago,
About that, yeah.
although they hadn't been in use for decades.
Yeah, we're essentially proposing to build 2 homes where the existing buildings have been since the early 1900s. And rather than venture off into areas of the site that have never been developed. And when you look at, when you visit the site, you'll see some remnants of infrastructure. There's foundations that are still there that'll probably have to be removed. And so, it's pretty obvious why we're building where we're building. It's the only place to build there on that site, on that north. And where my cousin lives, you know, his home has been there, and there were outbuildings there before he turned it into a home. And so that's been a sort of developed part of the site, you know, for decades as well.
And is his home one of the 3 single-family homes?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so
And
only
there's-
2 of
there's a-
them will be new.
That's correct.
Yes, and there's an existing single-family home on Bartlett's Bay, fronting on Bartlett's Bay Road, which will be torn down.
Oh, okay.
So there's 2 existing single-family homes on the property, one to be demolished, one that David lives in, and then 2 new ones.
Okay, thank you.
And lot 3 actually, well, both lots 3 and lots 4 both have existing structures on it that would be part of those pieces. So there is a fairly substantial, what was the reception area for the inn on lot 3 and the boathouse. And then on lot 4, there's a large storage barn.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I mean, Don, can I ask a question of Eric?
Sure, go ahead, Mark.
So Eric, can I assume the site hasn't had much change or development other than the shoreline stabilization that was done, I don't remember when, but remember the board did a site visit for the shoreline stabilization. And, you know, when we did do a site visit back then, is it still pretty much in the same condition?
Yes, the only Dave's maintained the property for decades. The only thing he did is put the wall up on the shore years ago because he was
Right, which is part of the site visit.
right, and then he tore a lot of the old inn buildings down that were about to fall down. Hasn't done anything else.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Mark. Any other questions? All right, number 11. This is, the board should discuss whether to direct the applicant to provide a buffer area on the non-conserved portion of the lot to ensure success of the conservation management plan.
So this comment is sort of taken in conjunction with comment number 9, where the house lots, as you can see, are fairly large relative to the size of a home. You know, lot coverage is limited to, 20% or something? There's no way a single home is going to cover 20% of a 7-acre lot. There is a standard for a buffer area between incompatible uses, or to avoid or minimize the impacts of development on conserved resources and open space that's not part of the conserved area. So the question here is, you know, given the size of these lots, it's almost like a designated building envelope to help keep that, so that instead of saying, okay, my house is at the very edge of my lot, I want a little bit of a yard and a little bit more yard and a little bit more yard. Maybe there's a buffer area.
Not uncommon to what's typically requested for wetland buffer delineation for a multifamily project. Is that what you're alluding to?
No, I think she's talking about a building envelope. So you might have a setback, pick a number, 10 feet off the boundary line, so that you're not building right up to the conservation edge.
Right.
Yeah. And the only
Oh.
exception to that is David's home is pretty close to the edge already existing, but.
But that's a done deal.
Yeah. So,
And there's very steep slopes right off the edge that prevent him from
Yeah.
expanding outwards.
I think we could probably, manage some kind of a defined, building envelope.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thanks. Questions, board? Okay. How are we doing on time here? 4 minutes. Okay, number 12. This is a question about the vision for mixed-use component of the project in the TND.
Yep. So we were envisioning it to be live-work units in the townhouses. So I don't know if you can throw up the T&D layout.
What's the question here?
So it would be when we really calculated it, it would really require a fairly large number of those townhouses to be 5% of the total development area, which that development area is calculated utilizing the residential and the civic space and the mixed use. As part of what we are sort of spinning in our heads now, it seems like it might make more sense to as cottage commercial, being that, quite honestly, we don't think mixed use is the right thing for this area. Like we have a very hard time envisioning non-residential uses in this area. It wouldn't be a coffee shop, and I think it would be undesirable to have destination businesses in here. So we're throwing around a few ideas. Maybe if it's more on the cottage commercial line, maybe it could almost be like a co-working space for the residents in the neighborhood. We're trying to wrap our heads on how best to meet that.
Okay.
And what we don't want to do is build something there's no demand for.
Right, of course.
And interestingly enough, almost every single family home today is a live-work space, with remote working. So if we were to do cottage commercial, we might orient it up close to the railroad track at the entrance where you cross, because it's more to keep any kind of commercial traffic out of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But we're not convinced that there's sufficient demand for it in any event.
Okay.
So some uses that are allowed in the TND, it's not, I think, Mike, you and I had an initial conversation and we had both missed that there's like an extra column in the use table that is specifically for TNDs. It's not just this zoning district. And I don't know if you've since seen that. But
You should take a look.
things like childcare facilities, offices, indoor-outdoor recreation facilities, all kinds of restaurants, retail sales, which you have noted that doesn't seem to make sense for you. Personal instruction, community center kind of things, cultural facilities. All these things are are permitted. So, I think the co-working space makes a lot of sense. Because that could be anything. That could be, where you go to get your violin lessons, or it could be where you sit and do your architecture work. But I just wanted to point out that there are more, I think, than you and I had originally thought.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, let's look at 13. This is a question about the improvement plans for homes and Bartlett Bay Roads. We've talked about it a little bit already. Do you have anything to add to that?
We don't, other than down the road, we'll have to do a traffic study or get a traffic study done, presumably, and usually that brings out if there's any inadequacies in the servicing roads that, like intersection upgrades or whatever. So I think we would deal with that a little bit farther in the process.
Thank you. All right, let's take a few more. Number 14 is regarding connectivity. And I had a question about this, the planned project at Fayette Road. What is that?
That's the Larkin PUD that you've already seen this.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay. So this is regarding connectivity between the neighborhoods.
So we think that there's a lot of opportunity for connectivity.
Okay.
From the whole Larkin subdivision up near the movie theater through the in-road. I think we're very open to discussing the recreation path being on the west side of the railroad, which I think would be much more desirable than being pinned between the railroad and the existing Farrell distributing facilities, and then meandering through the T&D neighborhood and eventually out to Bartlett Bay Road.
Okay. Any questions, board? Number 13, I'm going to read this. Understanding that roads are not fully designed at the sketch plan stage of review, staff further recommends the board ask the applicant to describe how they will meet the requirement for the local streets to serve all users, emphasizing pedestrian access and walkability. Staff considers cyclist connectivity can either be addressed within the neighborhood or along the railroad if allowed within the GMP easement.
We agree.
Okay.
So I don't know what the standards are, but I think we'd want that for the benefit of the neighborhood as well.
Okay. Let's take one more, number 16. Staff recommends the board discuss with the applicant the possibility of providing lake access as a civic space.
Well, I think that's up to the city council. I don't think that my cousin is gonna donate access to the lake shore, and so I think that as a practical matter, I think the only way that will happen is if the city wants to acquire the property. Otherwise, we have no plans
Okay.
to do that.
Okay. I think this is probably a good place to start. We're about halfway through, maybe a little more than halfway through. So I'm going to, we'll talk in a few minutes.
Don, can I ask a question?
Sure,
Eric?
go ahead, Mark.
Eric, I understand that, it's a bigger picture discussion with city council in terms of public access to the shorefront, but will residents of the neighborhood be provided access?
They will not. The South Meadow residents will not have access to the lake. The only access to the lake will be for the benefit of the 3 single-family lots.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks for clarifying.
Yep.
Is this the time we talk about a date, or do we wait till after public comment?
Hi there.
Continuation.
Why don't you go to public comment?
Okay.
And then I want to talk about a little bit of a date for a site visit as well. It occurs to me that, it was dark when we started.
Yes.
So it may need to be a right after work kind of thing.
Yep. How many people who are here in the auditorium, if you'd show by raising your hand, how many people intend to provide public comment? Okay. All right, and do we know how many are online?
Yeah, if you could raise your virtual hand online. I think there's a reaction button. You can just raise your hand if you would like to provide public comment. And sorry, we gave you very little notice, so we'll wait a couple seconds.
Given the number of people who are interested in commenting, I think what we're going to do is limit the comments to 3 minutes.
We have one online.
Okay.
And maybe others will, it may just take people a couple seconds to figure out how to raise their hand.
Okay, all right. So who would like to comment first? Michael? Is that Michael? Okay.
Can you come up to the,
I just asked the question.
Oh.
This sketch plan is gonna be continued?
Yes,
Further-
yes,
Will there be further opportunity for public comment?
yes. Who would like to comment first?
so I'm just going to ask you to use the mic because we do have a board member attending remotely.
Yes, step up, please.
Run the time.
Oh, great, okay, I was gonna say I can do it too.
Thank you so much for our friends in virtual land for using the mics.
I would like to suggest to this gentleman that.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Wesley Eldred. I'm in Queen City Park, and I'm in fact right at the Potash Brook, or the mouth of the Potash Brook.
Can you make sure you speak up so we can all hear you, and is the mic on?
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Mic's on.
thank you.
I'll trade you. Can you turn on your T coil that you?
Oh, yeah, we have that.
I have hearing difficulty.
Okay, we're gonna make that happen.
And the my house, my property stands in the way of pushing north. Maybe when I'm buried, which might have 20 years, maybe you'll have a chance, but there are no owners, residents in Queen City Park that will respond to an attempt to build through that property. I'm just suggesting that you not spend a lot of energy working on that until you see my obituary.
So,
The other question that
excuse me, sir, if you could address your comments to the board, not the applicant, please.
all right.
Thank you.
I would like an estimate of the total population that would be occupying all of the new houses, homes, and certainly the operators of your plant for the what do we call it? The
Wastewater.
the wastewater. Yes, they will be interested, of course, in what they are going to have for additional material to, and how much do they have to grow in order to deal with it comfortably.
Okay. I believe that at some point in the process, we will have our Public Works Department review this and provide comments.
Yep, they are already looking at it at a high level.
Okay. Good. Okay, thank you. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Glad you're taking notes.
I'm Marjorie Lipson. I'm a resident of Holmes Road, and I just want to make an overall, given that I understand we'll have many opportunities to respond, and I do want to thank Eric Farrell for inviting the neighbors to weigh in already. But I'm a little taken aback by both the staff report and the time spent tonight, because it's as though that very large 122 unit development isn't in your vision. So I don't hear any concerns about habitat or conservation or wetlands or a visit to that site. So I want to be very sure that when you do make a site visit, you visit that plot of land as well as the large area where the conservation is designated, because I don't think you can sever those two issues entirely. And then finally, it's my understanding, we all have deeded rights to Holmes Road. So individually, as homeowners, we have deeded access to that road. And it's my understanding that decisions really cannot be made to change that access unless we individually agree to it. I could be wrong about that, but I believe that is the ruling in Vermont. So we want to be sure that we are invited at every step of the way to have a conversation, because otherwise we won't be in a position to inform that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi
Hi.
there, I'm Gretchen Guida-Michaels. I live on Central Avenue, and I am a northern abutter on the brook. And I just want to clarify, when you guys asked if this project would be in phases, if you were like speaking only to the large development, because the way that the applicant responded made me think that there actually were two phases. So there's the large development of the 120 units, and then the two other lots were not really commented on when those would be developed. And part of the reason I asked that is because I don't understand the process, and maybe you can clarify, of exactly what the last speaker just brought up, concerns about wildlife and conservation. I don't understand the process about, I mean, there's a lot of wildlife that comes into the Queen City Park neighborhood from this property. And so can you tell me how that will be addressed?
Yeah.
It's a process question, really.
Sure. So typically when we talk about phasing, we're talking about the construction of infrastructure and civic spaces. So when he says that it's going to be not a phased development, I believe what Mr. Farrell is saying is that they're going to put in all of the public infrastructure at once. And because there's not any infrastructure required to support the development of those single-family home lots, we wouldn't really consider that to be a phase from a city planning perspective because they're not doing anything to support the development of those lots.
And then what about the opportunity to speak about wildlife and environmental impacts? Is that later for part of this group, or is that a separate committee?
So your opportunity to speak on this development will all those opportunities will be through the Development Review Board, like tonight's meeting and then any future meetings we have. You can direct concerns about habitat connectivity to us, to the DRB. There's also, I think we have Committee for Wildlife or Natural Resources, but they're not going to be specifically reviewing this project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next commenter, step right up, please.
A little clarifying, and Marty may have already said this, but we didn't get through the whole staff report, and some of the staff report does, later portions of the staff report talk about natural resources more.
Right, right.
Right. Good evening. My name is Kathy Easton, Easton. My husband and I live on Holmes Road in South Burlington. I appreciate this opportunity to make comments. I don't want our neighborhood on Holmes Road to sort of be cast aside in discussing the larger project that's coming. And I know there's going to be more times for a comment, but I just wanted to let you know a little bit about our neighborhood. For those of you who are not familiar with our small Holmes Road community, it consists of 10 homes located on a very quiet quarter-mile gravel road in the Lakeshore Neighborhood District. Our neighbors represent a wide range of occupations to include the fields of medicine, public service, law enforcement, retail and business, hospitality, etc. While several of us are now retired, when one considers the extent of our neighbors' employment experience, that collective time span would probably exceed 600 years of full-time work. 600 years working, saving, and planning so that we could live our lives in our chosen home, the state of Vermont, and the city of Burlington. Our properties represent a commitment to our families and neighbors, to our local community, and to life in the Green Mountain State. What's more, our properties represent our plans for a secure future as we age. In short, we are vested in our small community on Holmes Road. We value and work collaboratively with our neighbors. We strive to contribute positively to the greater community, and we treasure the natural world around us. We have already had 2 neighborhood meetings with developer Eric Farrell at his offering. We have found Eric to be personable and informative, and the exchange of ideas has been thought-provoking. That said, we know that we shall need to look for input and insights from city staffers, committee and community members, along with a host of experts, drawing on the collective viewpoints, expertise, and wisdom of all the participants who come to the table. We do recognize and understand that one way or the other, some type of fundamental change is probably coming our way. We just hope that in that journey, the ultimate outcome will be one that yields the most positive result, not only for our small neighborhood, but also for the greater community and the natural world as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who's next? Good evening.
Good evening. The green light's on, so you can hear me.
Okay.
I am Tom Easton, Easton. The better half just spoke to you a little bit ago. I will say that we did not collaborate on notes, so I had no idea what she was going to say. Hopefully there won't be a whole lot of overlap. I too live on Holmes Road as one of the 10 homeowners, property owners, in the Holmes Road Lakeshore neighborhood. Before I start, I would like to thank all members of the Development Review Board, as well as the members of the City Planning and Zoning Office, for the time and service that you give to our community of South Burlington and the critical function you perform in overseeing the development in our community. With that in mind, I would like to make one observation, then present several issues that our neighborhood is now facing based on the application for the land development which is before you tonight. First, my comment. First and foremost, my wife and I firmly believe in the property rights of landowners who legally own their property and are taxpayers within our respective communities. Although the news of a new planned development going in next to our old, well-established neighborhood may not initially be received with shouts of joy coming from the residents of the established neighborhood, it is the right of the property owners to develop or improve their land within established rules, regulations, and existing laws of a given municipality. That said, my wife and I also believe that the developer, along with a given municipality, has the obligation to blend the new with the old in such a manner so as not to be offensive in hopes that the two can harmoniously exist, not as one, but as two distinct and separate communities, i.e., both having their own separate identities and neither community trying to mold itself into the other. With the above said, and as it's been noted before, I just want to make sure that the board is aware that Eric, as well as Mike, have reached out to us as the residents in the Holmes Road neighborhood, and they've met with us on two separate occasions to solicit input from our small community on how best, but within reason, feral properties can modify their initial plans and better accommodate the needs and desires of our neighborhood. Although neither party will for sure know what can or cannot be done until the DRB chimes in with their regulatory oversight, we are hopeful a give and take working solution can be achieved in the long run. And I believe, was that the 3-minute?
Yes, it was. Thank you.
Okay, so you probably want me to wrap this up. I'll just say, in general, since we'll be meeting again, that there are several considerations or issues that we're looking at. And one is the Holmes Road remaining as it was. It's been discussed tonight. The second one is the environmental impact with the wildlife habitats, the corridors, and things like that. So we'll be chiming in later on that.
Mr. Easton, you're going to have to.
Okay. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'll look forward to talking to you later.
Thank you. Go ahead. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Lisa Hickey, and I live on Central Avenue and Queen City Park Road. And I have three, I think, relatively quick questions. Two of them are processed. One is, if you look at this map up along the Queen City Park boundary, it looks like some of the property goes right up to Potash Brook, where there is quite a bit of erosion, is my understanding. I know my neighbors who live on the Brook side of Central Avenue, there's not bedrock there, is my understanding, and so that there is continual propping up occasionally of buildings, and I know that they're not proposing any buildings there, but I'm wondering if you're looking at the conservation area and the percentage of the land that it encompasses, are you obligated to think about what kind of erosion could be happening along Potash Brook, basically removing potentially a lot of that land. Is that something you take into consideration? Like, is there a long-term perspective about that? I don't know that it is an issue. It's just something that I know on the other side of the brook has been. And so I'm wondering if in 15 years, there's much more erosion and all of, a sizable percentage of your conservation land has been eroded. Is that something you take, is that under your purview?
Do you have an answer to that, Marla?
Not off the top of my head, but I think it's an interesting point that I haven't heard brought up before, and we'll think
Yeah.
about it.
Okay, thanks. And then I just had two other process questions, because I'm relatively new to South Burlington. And one is, I think that we just redid our sewage system, correct? Did we not just, or are we in the process of, like, don't we have a new, or we just approved it?
Right. It's
Right,
in
so we
design
just
now.
approved it. And so I'm wondering, with that approval, how have you built in the capacity for X numbers of new units? Like, is that something, and this is again a process question, it's not specifically about this particular development issue, but because there will be so many new units, I'm wondering, is that something that will be taken into consideration? How do you build all of what will be increasing development into that?
Yeah, so short answer, if you don't mind,
please.
and please don't let this detract from Lisa's 3 minutes. The long-term planning for capital improvements takes into consideration sort of a short-term, a medium-term, and a long-term.
Okay.
So this would be considered a short-term project because there's a number associated with it.
Right.
Medium-term projects are projects that we've talked to people, but there's no number, and long-term projects are just based on the baseline growth rate of the city.
Right.
So all three of those things are planned into any new capital projects.
Okay, great. And then the sort of follow-up to that is schools. So as we know, our schools are crowded. We have infrastructure issues. These children would all, the children living in the proposed 122 units, of whom I am sure there will be many, would all probably be zoned for Orchard. I know that's a school district's issue to address, not the city council's, but I do wonder, and I know impact fees have been reinstated, but again, I'm wondering, as the DRB approves development projects of this size, how do you make sure, just another process, that you're incorporating that kind of consideration into the infrastructure needs of the city? And I know there's not a direct answer. I just wanted to sort of flag that as something. I'm not clear about how integrated the workings of all of the different stakeholders in this kind of thing are, and how much that is on under your purview, or sort of, yeah.
The city council, the city council is certainly dialed into this issue because it's come up before.
I know.
Discussions are happening. I don't know if you want to add. We're well aware that it's an issue.
Yeah, I'm smiling because it's a very insightful comment. Take everything I said about wastewater treatment plant, and I will say, I am assured that the school district is doing the same, but I cannot say for sure that they are because I don't do it. They call me and say, what are the numbers?
Right.
But I don't work with them through that process. So that's, largely a question for,
Well, I think
it's a large question that isn't really the purview of this board.
Right, but certainly as somebody who's been involved with the school board, what I have seen is that everybody feels like there isn't a comprehensive overview. There doesn't seem to be a process where the DRB says we're going to approve these numbers of seats, like school board, and let's meet all of us with city council and talk about how we're going to make that work, et cetera, et cetera. Because building things without making sure that schools can be built to accommodate them ultimately isn't good for everybody. So I'm just trying to sort of ask if that circle can get a little bit squared somehow. If that's the right expression, I don't think it is. But
I think to a large degree that's happening. I think that my understanding of that is because my responsibility is to staff the development review board is more limited, so I'm not able to answer as cleanly as
absolutely. And I'm just sort of mostly making the comment to throw it out there to sort of put in your pipe to smoke as a way to maybe coordinate with everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Who else would like to? Somebody come down. We have a little bit of a waiting here.
This is gonna be
You're next, so don't go far.
Adam, it's not going to take long. My name's Dana Twitchell. I live on Holmes Road. And the biggest problem we have is that Farrells have been great neighbors. We don't want any changes. They take impeccable care of their grounds, and they've always been friendly folks. I've known them for a long, long time. But we understand there's going to be expansion. It's just the way it is. And we're starting off working with them, and I hope we can continue on. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. You're getting your steps in.
I'm Adam Glazer. I'm Dana's neighbor on Holmes Road. I just wanted to, bring up a couple quick points with regards to maintaining Holmes Road as it is. Currently, Holmes Road runs by my front yard, feels more like a shared driveway with my neighbors than a proper road. The speed limit's 10 miles an hour. We put up a little, Kathy calls it our little farm stand of our excess fruit and veggies at the end of the road that people stop and grab. Just last week, I saw a bobcat come across the field, stood and stared at me on the road, and then continued north. And I understand that, and I appreciate Eric talking to us and asking for Holmes Road to remain as is. And I ask for your consideration. Some of the things he mentioned is the density concerns and with shrinking the development a little bit, being able to maintain the density concerns and have a buffer between our current road and the new neighborhood. And I just ask that since the north and the south side of Holmes Road in this project feel like very disparate pieces of property, and only that this is being considered as one proposal with all the density on one side and most of the conservation on the other side, that if you could consider that maybe the density requirement not be held true, if that's what it takes to give us a little bit of a buffer between Holmes Road and the neighborhood. As he's mentioned in talking with us, his willingness to allow for a buffer between our current road and the new neighborhood. And that'll do it for now.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Come on down.
Can I ask one clarifying question before my timer starts?
Introduce yourself first, please.
Greg Titcomb, Titcomb. I'm a resident of Holmes Road.
Okay.
With concerns to city access, basically like Holmes Road on the other side of the railroad tracks, and things that are not addressed in this plan, where they're referred to as we'll do a traffic study in the future and a bike path that has a lot of maybes and theoreticals. Are those suited for this committee here, or should those be saved for a later meeting?
Well, there will be other steps in this in the review, and the applicant needs to get more specific as we move through the process, and that's where we will be asking and gathering information on the very specific details that you're talking about. Is that correct, Marlon? Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, this is just really pretty high level right now, because as Mr. Farrell said, they don't want to invest a lot to get to a lot of details right now when they don't have a sense of what the board's reaction is.
Okay, so there will be an opportunity to be granted more than 3 minutes for details such as those.
Well, the 3 minutes is based on the reality of how much time we have and the number of people who want to provide testimony. There will definitely be other opportunities for public comment as we go through this application. This is a
And I would note that we encourage public comment in writing if you have something longer to say.
Okay, I can submit most of that.
Okay, thank you.
Via writing then. Okay, so we'll start at 3 minutes and I'll try to quickly go through this. My greatest levels of concern are Holmes Road, not necessarily the private dirt road, but the carrying capacity of the city beyond the railroad tracks. It's primarily an industrial road. There's two businesses that rely heavily on tractor trailer traffic. There's a great deal of traffic coming out of Farrell Distributing. There's 2 car dealerships that have service roads where customers are test driving cars they're not familiar with. Mechanics are testing cars by accelerating as fast as possible. It's a pretty squirrely road at a lot of times, with the 10 current residents on the road. Increasing that by 10 to 12 times. You know, I've seen, I believe the number was 124 units, 2 of which would not be using this, but there's been numbers, they're all around 120. So, you know, we're looking at an increase of probably 200 cars plus all of the cars that would be required to service such a facility, UPS trucks, trash trucks, etc. I don't believe that road is in a state able to handle that increased traffic, particularly with the 1-lane railroad crossing. That's just going to be a bottleneck. It's the north exit. Most things are north. That's going to be the primary means of entry and exit from the neighborhood. As much as we might want people to use that new road down to Bartlett Bay, it's not convenient. People aren't going to take a longer way around to sit through an extra traffic light on Shelburne Road. So those are a couple of Holmes Road concerns. Just being quick and paraphrasing, I believe that the bike path is an integral part of this neighborhood. So not seeing anything actually on a plan and hearing things like, theoretically we can do this, maybe we can get permission from Velcro, maybe we can do a railroad crossing, maybe it'll connect to something in the future. Without that bike path, the points that they made about this being a walkable neighborhood kind of go out the window. You could walk around in a circle. You could, walk down that new road and go to the Jiffy Lube, I guess. But without that access to Hannaford, to the movie theater, to the, Blissby, any sort of restaurant, any sort of local business a person might want to walk to, this would become an entirely car-centric neighborhood, which is antithetical to most, desired urban planning. Right. Ironically, the two businesses closest to this neighborhood, car dealerships. Yeah. In order to actually get anywhere without a bike path, you need to walk up this industrial road where I do it all the time. I'm almost hit by cars, semi-trucks, etc. regularly. But then once you get towards Shelburne Road, you actually need to walk down a car dealership service road through their parking lots, through the parking lots of various businesses. And then just quickly, I want to, just like 15 seconds, Quinn made a comment about this being the first conservation PUD. I want to make sure that since there isn't a precedent, that this is handled correctly and that the size and scope of it doesn't make it feel as just a knee-jerk reaction. A lot of it felt like when I was a child and my mom said to clean my room and I swept everything into one corner and the whole thing was cleaned or conserved. It's very crowded in the south portion of this conservation area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi. I'm Jane Boisvert. I live on Holmes Road, and my husband is Dana Twitchell, who spoke earlier. And I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you to the board and to Eric for consulting with the neighborhood and asking for our input. And I just wanted to share a little bit of my story. My family has lived on Holmes Road for over 45 years. I cared for my father in our home where he was granted his wish to die at home in peace in our quiet, peaceful neighborhood. I would like to think that we could maintain some semblance of this peace by retaining our neighborhood one-lane road with a generous buffer between our home and the proposed development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Sarah Dopp. I'm the president of the South Burlington Land Trust. There's a lot to like about this design of this neighborhood. I wish it could be somewhat smaller. I don't mean tiny, but smaller. And though I'm not a designer, I wish it could be flipped so that it was running in a north-south direction, because we all know that a neighborhood of this sort produces a plug in the north-south migration route for wildlife. And that's what this is very effectively doing, is plugging. And so it renders the existing conservation area lot, whatever, it's just off the screen, but where you have the cross-hatching, 1A, lot 1A, it will render that just an island in the midst of quite a lot of development around about it, north and south and so on. So, you know, if that development, if I were a designer and I could flip it, whatever number of degrees so that it would run north-south, be sort of close to the railroad line, that at least would open up a central corridor for movement between the lake and the railroad, which has always existed. I would love to see that explored. I'm also curious about the fragmentation of the lake shore. I know there's these 3 lots. I get that. I'm sure they all have lake frontage. That would be obvious. So is it that there's a little section of lake frontage left, then a parcel? I can't really see the property boundaries on here, but so is there some lake frontage, then a building lot, then some more lake frontage, and then a building lot, so that it's all broken up? Is there any way of conjoining 2 of them so it only takes a certain section of the lake frontage and maybe creates a little more lake frontage somewhere else in the distance? I'd just like to see that explored, or see those boundary lines a little clearer so I could understand that better. And then the last comment I guess I've got at this point is, I think I heard it asserted that the Natural Resources and Conservation Committee would not have any input in this project. That surprised me very much. Maybe I misheard, but I certainly hope they will. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a response to that, Marla?
Yeah, I misspoke earlier, I guess. I just meant to say that they don't specifically review development projects. If we need to kick something to them, we certainly can. But if you're looking to speak to the developer or to the DRB about the habitat connectivity standards and our LDRs, they would be through us.
Right, so the Natural Resources and Conservation Committee would be looking at projects, either on their own volition or at the recommendation of the board. But the board, if you had comments on those elements, it should be made to the board. I mean, you can certainly make them the Conservation Committee, but they don't have the authority.
They certainly used to weigh in, that's why.
Yeah, right, and they probably should here too. And just a comment on the lakeshore as well, one of the things we didn't get to tonight is that the floodplain is one of the areas that's required to be part of the conservation area. So at least the floodplain part of the lakeshore would become part of the conservation area.
So what do we need to do to get input from the Natural Resources Committee?
I would be happy to take your feedback to send it to them right now.
Okay, I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. My name's Chris Colovos, C-O-L-O-V-O-S. I live on 119 Holmes Road with my wife, Megan Gething. Thank you for taking the time to review this, and thanks to Eric that we have had very fruitful discussions. But I think it's very important to come and take a look at our neighborhood. It's really a very special place. I've been living there now for 5 years. You don't know how many different sorts of wildlife we see. June, the forest is just full of fireflies. It's something very special. And since this is the first case that you guys are going to review in this sort of environmental impact, I think your choice has to be very judicious. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it a good time now to go to online comments?
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
I'm going to start.
We're not, I mean, you're still getting your chance.
We'll go to Selma first. And then I think that Eden also had a comment.
Thelma?
Selma with an S.
Selma.
Let's see if they are still
Are you with us?
Yep, there we go.
Yes, I am. Sorry. Um, I'm actually wife of Eddie Slange. I was just making sure that his comment gets seen because he had to jump off. So if one of you just wants to read it, if that's easier to hear, that's fine with me.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Eden had a comment that said earlier. Okay. Would like to know what type of privacy/safety fence/barrier is planned for the 4 properties impacted by the Street E connecting to Bartlett Bay Road. Oh, it's those those 4 on the small street. Sorry, I didn't mean to imply the properties are small. The street is small. Okay.
So is this a question for?
Well, I mean, I think that the format tonight is generally put all the questions on the table rather than have a back and forth with the applicant. But if it's something you'd like the applicant to think about and address at a later meeting, we can certainly ask them to do that.
That might make sense. Could you give that some thought?
I don't think I understand the question.
Okay.
Sorry.
I just have what was written, and I don't know, Selma, if you wanted to, I can let you unmute again if you had any more clarification.
Are you talking about a fence along that line where you're moving?
I believe that is the question, whether there's anything proposed.
Yes.
And I would say at this time, there's nothing specific. There is a rec path on that side. There'll be street trees. Obviously, we won't be impacting that property with grading or construction activities. And those houses are a bit off, but we'd probably be open to discuss and hear their concerns.
Selma, did you hear that?
Yes, I did. Thank you. To add to the comment, we have met at the Lakeview Homes have met, and we would like to request, if possible, to meet with you, as well as we see that you've met with the home side, but we have not been met with, and our concerns have not been addressed. So if it's possible at all, we would love that opportunity.
Absolutely.
Okay. I see Mr. Farrell nodding yes and saying absolutely. So good. Thank you.
Because as mentioned on the home side of the road, the neighborhood is going to be impacted greatly by this change, our privacy and our views, and again, animals that we see as well. So I would love to have a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else online?
Doesn't look it, no.
Okay. Gentleman who was, yeah.
Good evening. My name is Mark Sherman, Marcsherman. I live at 123 Holmes Road. And along with all of my neighbors who are here today, I think we're appreciative of the collaborative discussions that Eric Farrell has had with us and come forward to talk to us. And he is known for being a considerate developer, and it seems to be the case from our discussions, and it's been a pleasure talking to him. We also, my wife and I at 123 Homes, recognize the importance of housing right now in Chittenden County and in South Burlington, and realize that all of the comments that my neighbors have made regarding wildlife habitat for geese, deer, fox, bobcat, and countless other animals, along with the traffic flow issues that need to be considered in the study for getting onto Shelburne Road, whether it's through Bartlett Bay or off of Holmes Road, are critical. As it is now with the industrial LTL freight for UPS, Farrell Distributing, and access from the 2 dealerships is often a considerable hang up at the traffic light getting onto Route 7, and we do believe that most of the residents of this neighborhood, whatever size it is, will use that access to Route 7 and not necessarily Bartlett Bay. That being said, there are also significant safety issues on that road. As Greg mentioned, my wife and I have both been nearly T-boned with people coming out of those side roads from the dealerships and from Farrell Distributing, and to a lesser degree LTL freight. We really feel that those need to be considered when you think about putting probably 200 additional cars going up and down that road every day. I also saw the mention of school district issues. Orchard School is considerably overpopulated, as it is this year. My wife and I have a 5-year-old who wasn't able to get into after-school programming because of the lack of staffing, and that's without the additional children. This is a, great conceptual development, and it meets all the density requirements that are laid out by the city of South Burlington. I don't think that addresses the fact that these types of developments will be populated with families with children, and that will be needed. Personally, I love the idea of having a playground nearby and other children nearby for my son. We live on a block with, I think we have the only child on the block. So, so I think it's also interesting, and Greg pointed this out with his bedroom analogy. I love that. I do that with my desk at work. But the to see a development of this size compressed into this piece of a 105-acre property, it's hard to envision if that's the only way. But what I would say, it seems to me like that is it's a developer based, and the cost of building something like this, making these decisions more so than necessarily being the best thing. Although certainly a community of this is great. And I'll finish in saying that I really think there's a huge importance, following Chris's comments, of preserving the existential aspects of our neighborhood. It's a seemingly small rural neighborhood only yards from Shelburne Road, yet the unpaved tree-lined road and the forest that is there, which may seem small in some of these drawings, but is significant with large trees and well-developed internal structure, maintaining as much of that as possible when looking at this and accepting that, yes, there will be development in this field, and yes, it will be more homes than any of us would love to see in our backyards, but there's a way to do it. There has to be a way to do it that preserves this existential neighborhood that we have, the existential nature of our neighborhood, understanding that there is a need for additional housing. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Megan Gething, and I live on Holmes Road. I have concerns about the forest that's going to be chopped down on the west side of the development. A lot. It's a it seems to me, and I understand the thing about the parceling of the land that there's only so much, but this is forest here is mature trees. They're gorgeous, and if you look at this layered resource where you can kind of see the layers of everything that's available in terms of the natural resources, this is also a habitat for, rare and endangered species according to the map. So that really, really, really concerns me. And that forest there, I don't quite know why the development needs to be so big. I have a lot of concerns about that forest being chopped down. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Did I see your hand go up?
Oh, I was just, so if we have other comments, we should email them to Marla.
Yes. Yeah, so in a general way, once a meeting is concluded, we can't accept new public comments, but because this is going to be continued, we are happy to accept public comments. Anything that is sent to me before the week before the scheduled date will be published in the packet for everyone to read. Anything else will just be sort of forwarded to the board after the next conversation.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So you want to talk about scheduling?
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
Just a quick procedural question.
Yes.
If we signed in, will we continue to receive notices as to agendas and the like related to this project? Or do we have to attach our name directly to the project itself? We're a butter, so we got this letters to say, come.
Yes, so you will always get an abutter. If you are an abutter, you will always get the same type of notice when there's a new meeting. If it's a continued meeting, like tonight is going to be continued to a later date, there won't be a new notice sent out. You can always check the minutes, or you can get on the list that has the agenda sent out at the end of every week to check to see when it's going to, if you missed one, or talk to your neighbors. But you only get a butter notice when there's a new hearing. So this is the first first step in a multi-step process. So every time that we start a new step, there'll be a new abutter notice that goes out. And there'll also be always a placard. And I think, Mike, you put that at the railroad crossing on Holmes Road. Eric, somebody?
Eric did, yes.
Okay. So there's always a little poster. If I could ask you guys, actually, when the hearing is concluded, to take those down, because I think it is a little muddies the waters when people leave it up when there's no longer an active hearing. That way they can see, oh, there's a new placard, there must be a new hearing.
But keep it up until the continued meeting's completed, right?
Right, yeah. So actually you have to keep it up until the appeal period expires. But if there's, a 3-month gap, take it down during that time if you would.
That does not include the abutters that are in Queen City Park, though?
So only direct abutters to the property, which may include some folks in Queen City Park.
There's quite a few people in Queen City Park that are direct abutters. There's not a placard over there, though. The placard there's one placard, and that's...
And subsequent stages of review will be in the newspaper, too.
Yeah.
Sketch plan doesn't go in the paper. More hearings for which a decision is issued does go in the paper.
Okay, let's talk about dates because we're already way over time.
Is it also just worth noting that these meetings are recorded, and so if folks miss one, they could rewatch it? I know your intent is to attend, but if you have a conflict, you can always find the backlog. Those are available on YouTube, so you can monitor it through all the avenues, and then also you can catch up if you miss one. So,
thank you. That's good. Okay, dates.
November 7th would be a good date for the continued hearing. If we think we can schedule, I would like to have a site visit before that point. Site visit has to be warned as a public meeting. I can get something in next Thursday's paper. So we could meet anytime between the 26th and the 7th for a field visit. Do we want to stick to the Tuesday thing? Because members generally are available Tuesdays.
So Marla, I'm out of the country from the 20th to Halloween. October 20th to the 31st.
Okay, so maybe not the 31st then, because that would be the only Tuesday in that window that works with the paper deadline. We could do Wednesday, November 1st, or Thursday, November 2nd.
I think I'm available.
Mark,
One
John?
thing also to keep in mind is that going that far out, sunset actually is getting down to like 4:30.
Yep.
Oh, boy. All right. Thoughts on that, Mark? Any alternative suggestions?
What about a noontime?
Yeah, that would be my suggestion.
I guess you're all local.
Or first thing in the morning, whatever.
Does that work for you? You probably have the longest drive.
yeah, I can accommodate that.
Okay.
Where do you live?
I live off Spruce Street.
Okay. But you have an office that's farther away, don't you? That was what I was thinking. But you can make it work.
Well, I mostly work from home.
Okay.
So
Okay. So noontime on the 1st, is that too crazy?
Let's see what day.
Wednesday.
Wednesday, November 1st.
Pretty sure I could do that. Noontime?
Is that going to be okay with you? That'll be the first day you're back.
Yeah, I'll be jet lagged.
Pardon me?
I'll be jet lagged.
And our hearts will bleed for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's also my packet deadline day, which gives me at least a little bit of chance to respond to anything that happens in the field in the packet. Not a lot, like 4 hours. But
Yeah,
that's okay.
But you're a magician. Okay, so Wednesday, November. God, I can't believe we're into November already.
Okay.
November 1st.
So we need to make a motion to continue this to November 7th and to make a motion to hold a site visit on November 1st at noon.
No, you don't need a motion for the second part.
We don't. Okay. We don't need a motion to continue for the
We do
site
need a
visit?
motion to. No, because it's a separate meeting.
Okay.
So do I have a second to Mark's motion to conclude, to continue this hearing to November 7th?
Second.
Thank you. John, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay. Now, you will send us instructions as to where we should meet?
Yes, I'll talk to Eric about that,
Okay,
or Mike.
great. And we should wear comfortable shoes, hiking boots.
So Marla, how does that meeting get warned? Because it will be a public meeting, open to the public, or is it just
Yeah, so
typically?
it'll be, I'll word it carefully, but it's open to the public, but it's just
I know,
fact taking. It's
in
they,
the public,
the applicant
right.
makes a presentation of
Right.
what the facts are of the lay of the land. This is where we're proposing this. This is where we're proposing that. There won't
Yeah.
be a discussion other than to clarify
Right.
facts.
Yep. Okay.
Okay,
Can I ask one question?
sure.
Marlo, if we make any revisions or create any new exhibits, when would you need those submitted by?
So generally, anything that you want incorporated into the staff report, we need 2 weeks before the continued meeting date.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
See you in a couple weeks. Have a great trip, Eric.
Pardon?
Have a great trip.
Thank you. It was a good idea 6 months ago.
He's going to be tortured.
Exactly.
It's still recording and we have another hearing. That's okay.
Never mind. Well, people are getting like, where do we get the information about what the
I know.
Okay, will do. Thanks.
Oh, we're much later than I thought we'd be. Yeah.
We haven't had a late meeting in a while. we were
spoiled.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. We missed you.
Oh my God, don't worry. Yeah. Biting my tongue, it's killing me.
So we're gonna move on to the next thing.
Okay. You know these guys?
But
Wait.
we are recording, Frank. You want to save it for later? All right, shall we start? Continued appeal AO23 of Robert Payson and Kathy Brunette.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Thank you. And so, Marty, if you would like to take the.
Let me find this here.
And I will try to take notes and present at the same time. We will see how that goes.
All right.
Oh, Marty, you have to stop presenting.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks.
So,
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to try to be a wizard here, and I'm going to try to run the meeting and pay attention to what's being said and take notes and keep an eye out for people who have questions or raise their hand virtually. Here we go.
So, this is appeal number AO 2301 of Robert Payson and Kathy Burnett at 17 Apple Tree Court, Burlington, appealing the decision of the acting administrative officer that there is no performance standard violation at 408 Shelburne Road. Before you start, Marty, are you the only person testifying tonight?
I believe.
Are you the appellant?
Yes.
Okay. And you,
Pardon? Oh, well,
Just tap the, right, I got you.
yeah, yes, I'm Robert Payson.
thank you. All right, first we're going to hear from the administrative officer.
Well, so let me do some introduction if you don't mind, Dawn.
Sure.
So this is a different process than our usual meetings.
Yes.
This is an appeal. The board is acting as a court. So what the board has to do is the board has to first identify interested people. And so anyone who wants to be considered an interested person has to state why they believe they're interested people. Sorry, I'm jumping around because I forgot that I'm presenting. The interested people have to meet one of 3 tests, which I will show in a second. I can't talk and scroll at the
I think
same
there
time.
are 5 actually, aren't there?
And so people are going to say that they're interested people, and then the board is going to decide if they agree that they're interested people, and if they are, then they will be able to provide testimony. If you are not, if the board does not accept you as an interested person, you won't be providing testimony. You can still provide public comment, but the board doesn't take it with the same it's not the same, like, you know, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth kind of thing. So let me just pull up the criteria and we can go through those quickly. And then,
While you're doing that, let me ask,
here we go.
Are there any people here who want to be considered an interested person?
I think there are online. Let me see.
Okay.
I gotta magically unmute
you?
some people first.
Two, okay.
Oh dear. Sorry, this is a lot. This is a lot of things that I'm trying to do all at once.
Yes, it is.
So I've got Liam unmuted, and was there anyone?
Yes, Liam Murphy is appearing on behalf of the appellants.
Thank you.
Anyone else who wanted to be an interested person, if you could raise your virtual hand.
Do we need to have any disclosures?
Yep. Ask for
So I
disclosure.
guess I'm going to disclose that I am a long-term friend of Liam Murphy, who's representing the appellant, but I don't believe that's going to, unless you have some concerns, Liam, I don't believe that's going to interfere with my ability to be objective. Can you live with that?
I'm fine with that if the other parties are.
Okay. All right, good.
I don't see anyone else who's raised their hand virtually who want to be. Oh, someone's waving.
Yeah, well, both of my clients, Bob Payson and Kathy Burnett, will want to speak as well.
Okay, Kathy, did I successfully unmute you? Did it? There you go. Okay.
Hello.
And then anyone in the audience that would like to be considered an interested person?
There's two.
Okay. So let's have everyone state why they believe they're an interested
Okay,
person.
how many are online? Two?
Two.
Two. Because Kathy's not an interested person. She's part of the appellant.
Yes.
Right, and so that makes her an interested person.
Okay.
And it's sort of a foregone conclusion, if I may overstep my bounds, that she is in fact an interested
Yes.
person because she appealed the decision.
Sure. Okay. All right. So why don't we start with you, sir? Why don't you explain to us? These are the 5 criteria. Why do you believe you're an interested person?
Do I need the mic or can I just speak or?
Can we hear?
Yeah, you need the mic because we have some people online, including a board member.
Is that one set up?
Should be. If it doesn't, there's.
Hello.
Yep.
My name is Adam Jones. I'm the proprietor of Myers Bagels at 408 Shelburne Rd.
And why do you think you should be considered an interested person?
The entire case is based upon our production, what we do, and how we do our business. So I'd like to be able to respond or answer if possible.
Board, do we agree?
Let's do everybody, and then we'll talk about them afterwards, if that's okay.
Oh, you don't want to do it one at a time.
I suspect that you're just going to say okay to all of them.
Okay. All right, let's go. Let's move on. Thanks. Sir.
My name is Joe Larkin with Larkin Realty, landowner of 408 Shelburne Road. I'm here as an interested person as the manager of the property that Adam leases.
Okay, thank you, Joe. All right, folks online. Who's next, Marla?
You can go with Liam first.
Liam, go ahead.
Oh, I'm here as an attorney for the 2 appellants, Bob Payson and Kathy Burnett.
Thank you. And who is the last person?
Online?
Yes, didn't you say there were
Yeah,
2?
there's a person there. She has a name that I don't think is a person name. Who can you state your name and why you're an interested person, please?
Yes. Yes, my name is Kathy Burnett and I'm one of the appellants.
Yeah, okay. Oh, I thought there was another one. Okay. All right, board. Let's take them one at a time. Adam Jones, the owner of Myers Bagels.
Interested person.
Yep. Yes, okay. Joe Larkin.
Interested person.
Okay. Joe Larkin. Liam Murphy.
Yes, interested person.
And I'm missing someone's name. I'm sorry. Bob
My
and
name is
Kathy.
Kathy Brunette.
Kathy, okay. All right. So are we in agreement that all of these individuals are interested persons?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, other than Mr. Payson, have the other appellants identified themselves as adjacent property owners?
No.
There are no other adjacent property owners here except you, correct?
Correct.
Well, and Kathy lives with you?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so yes.
So the people who have identified themselves as appellants are all adjacent property owners?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Let's see. Sorry, it's gotten so late. Okay, we are going to invite, in this order, people to provide testimony, and we'll start with the acting administrative officer, and then move on to the appellant and any other interested persons that were previously identified. So go ahead, Marty.
Sure. Yeah. Mr. Payson first contacted us at Planning and Zoning in February to inquire about air quality standards in the city of South Burlington, and then reached out again in June to report his concerns regarding the wood smoke emissions generated by the operation of Myers Bagels at their new location at 408 Shelburne Road in South Burlington. For context, this property received site plan approval in 2014, July of 2014, to convert an existing short order restaurant, which was KFC at the time, to standard sit-down restaurant use. The first tenant was Junior's, and it's since changed a couple times. That property then received a zoning permit in October of 2022 to construct a wood-fired oven and grill in that existing standard restaurant. That decision to approve that zoning permit was not appealed at the time. So in June of this year, I reviewed our land development regulations and our various ordinances for any regulatory language that might pertain to wood smoke emissions, and determined that our performance standards for both air pollution and odors, which are in Appendix A4 and A5, respectively, might apply to the situation that Mr. Payson had described in his email to us. On Friday, July 7th, I performed a site visit at about 10 a.m. At 10:02 a.m., so I kind of drove to the property on Shelburne Road. I tried to identify the chimney, and at 10:02 a.m., I thought I had found it and stood in the rear of the property. I could see the chimney, and Marla has pulled up my map. So that green X, that where her cursor is where I stood. As I made my observation, the chimney is sort of on the closest part of the roof to that X, which is why I chose that spot. And then at 10:04, I drove up to Apple Tree, right there where the second X is. And that property in between two X's is Mr. Payson's. And so I didn't go on his property, but I got kind of as close as I could on the road, trying to see if I could get a glimpse of the chimney. But because of the house, I could not see the chimney, although I knew where I was. So I made observations at both of those sites. I observed no odors in violation of the odors performance standard, and observed no visible emissions that were in violation of the air pollution performance standard during that site visit. As a result of those observations, the limited evidence that had been submitted by Mr. Payson at that time, and the fact that our office had received no other public comment on the topic, I determined that, at the time of that site visit, there was no evidence that Myers Bagels was in violation of either relevant performance standard. I therefore concluded that, given the information available to me, no further investigation was necessary. I communicated this information to Mr. Payson in an email dated July 7th of 2023. I did, in that email, invite Mr. Payson to provide further information and offered that our office could and would revisit this issue if there was more evidence, but did not hear from him, although I do understand he has submitted materials as part of his application tonight. To date, the city has not received complaints of wood smoke emission or offensive odors at the Myers Bagels property from anyone else. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Is that appropriate? Can you show me on this diagram where the ovens are located, please?
I don't know where the ovens are located, but the chimney is right to the top left of where that thing.
Okay. And that's where if there were odors, that's where the odors would come out.
Presumably the wood stove is below that.
Okay, thank you.
There are in the packet for the board plans
Some pictures.
that were from the zoning permit, and that does have floor plans if it becomes relevant, I believe.
Okay. Any other questions for Marty?
Yes, I have a question, preceded by a short speech. I went through carefully the materials, and I stand to be corrected by Liam or the appellant. But the only thing I saw at issue, and I'd like to focus on that with you, was A5B. I don't see the interest of the public being involved here. But A5B doesn't talk about the public. It simply says any process which may involve the creation or emission of any odors shall be provided with a secondary safeguard system so that control will be maintained if the property safeguard system should fail. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but I want to ask you first, do you doubt the appellant's report that there is at least some odor coming from the chimneys?
I wouldn't say that I doubt it, but I will say that I was unable to confirm it.
You smelled nothing?
Correct.
You were there when the ovens were operating, when the brick oven was operating, or don't you know?
I'm not certain. I don't know.
Wouldn't that be important to know?
That would be probably important to know, yeah.
All right. And what is a secondary safeguard? Can you explain the meaning of that provision? It's sort of, I find it.
I think my understanding is that a lot of the performance standards were developed with sort of.
No, I'm not asking you how the performance standards were developed. I'm asking you about the meaning of A5B.
Yeah, and I'm saying that because they were developed for, I believe, more industrial uses. As a way to regulate industrial production things, not necessarily for. So if you were doing something on a larger manufacturing chemical scale, the performance standard there is sort of.
So your interpretation of B is it simply doesn't apply. It's not applicable to the circumstance.
I wouldn't say it's inapplicable. It's a performance standard.
Well, no, A5B, since it's your interpretation is it's only intended for industrial applications, not for something as.
No, that's my understanding of where it originates from. I'm not saying that it's not applicable here.
So if there is any odor, I'm just reading the language. If there is any odor coming from the chimney, there should be a secondary safeguard system. Is that right?
I'd agree that's correct. Yeah.
Is there a secondary safeguard system?
I'm not sure.
Okay. That's the end of my questions.
Any other questions? Thank you, Marty. And next we will hear from, I'm sorry, I'm a little rusty on this. We will hear from the appellant.
I think Liam was going to go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Liam.
Good evening. Thank you. I know it's been a long night and hopefully we won't keep you here too much longer. This is an awkward situation that we're in. The inspection was one day out of now what's been 365 days of operation there. And the only reason that I appealed was because I was concerned that if there was not an appeal, then we would be bound by the decision forever. And that's why we appealed. Obviously, everything depends there on which way the wind blows. The wind is predominantly from the west, but it often is come from the north or the south, and where you stand depends on what you will smell. So, that's one of the problems about being here. We're here about, an inspection on one day, but we felt we had to appeal in order to preserve the issue. My concern first is on a legal basis that the staff has been reading the section 316 and the complaint quite narrowly. This is not only about odor. This is about the smoke and the odor and the pollution that is within the smoke. And if you look at the whole of 316, you know, there's a purpose of it is to reduce to a minimum dissemination of smoke, gas, dust, odor, or atmospheric pollution outside the structure or beyond the property boundaries. Number B talks about that no land or structure shall be used or occupied in any manner to cause hazardous or objectionable conditions to exist in any way endangers users of the site or surrounding area. And it goes on to limit them, including smoke, dust, vibration, air pollution, or other hazardous or objectionable conditions on site in the surrounding area. And then we get to the performance standards, and you'll see in the note at the end of A4 and A5 that the staff considers ready detection and unreasonable interference to be the first step of an administrative officer to enforce. Well, that's not how it reads. There's not an and there. It says pollutants. It says that it is an or, not an and. No emission shall be permitted of odorous gases or odorous matters in such quantity as to be readily detectable or as to interfere unreasonably with the comfort of the public. So this is not solely a public issue. The intent is for surrounding properties, and the quantities are readily detectable. We did submit, and there's been some technical issues in submitting some materials, but we did submit a 4 or 5 minute video that shows visible smoke coming onto the appellant's property many times. In addition, there have been some other neighbors who have submitted letters this week. I think there were 2 other neighbors who submitted information to the board with complaints. So it is
Liam,
not.
I didn't receive any other letters.
You didn't? I got a copy of I'll have to send it to you. I got a copy of an email from Bob that was a copy of an email to Marla today, yesterday maybe. And then there was another neighbor who I thought emailed as well.
Excuse me, they didn't send them because they sent them to me, and I emailed them back and said, please send them to you.
No, I didn't get anything.
By the
Well,
way,
I apologize. We thought they were both being.
My next door neighbor, Ben Hewitt, sent one. I can email it to you right now if that's appropriate. I can forward it to you.
All right. So there are other, neighbors besides these.
excuse me for just a second, Liam. I may have missed it, but has there been a swearing in of the witness?
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, I didn't swear. So I should swear Liam in?
Everyone.
Everyone. Okay, everybody, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
I do.
I do.
Obviously, I don't do a lot of these, so I'm a
It
little.
looked like your left hand, Liam. I don't know.
Well, no, it's my right hand, but it's the way the TV works. It sort of puts things back.
I'll go with the perjury part.
So I think first the ordinance, we'd like this to look more broadly than odors. And I wonder if I could briefly be permitted to share the screen.
Mm-hmm. You're to show us a video?
No, I wasn't going to do that. That's a pretty long video
Okay.
right now. But, I just wanted to note a few things.
Okay, so you're sharing something that you have. You're not pointing to things on my screen, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Let me figure this out.
I'm disabled, it says.
Yep, you are. I got to figure out how to let you do it.
I think you click the green button and just enable. Allow, I think.
Okay, I can only allow all participants, so everyone else has to swear they won't take advantage of this. Okay, go ahead, you should be able to.
So first, I'm showing a portion of a letter that was sent to the EPA in just June of this year by our Vermont Attorney General and 10 other Attorney Generals to the EPA it's a notice of intent to sue. And it talks about, and very briefly in this paragraph, but it has all of the citations, public health hazards from wood smoke. As EPA acknowledged in the 2015 performance standards, wood smoke contains fine particulate matter, PM, carbon monoxide, polycyclical aromatic hydrocarbons, and other toxic air pollutions. All of these compounds negatively impact public health. Of direct relevance to the performance standards, and these are performance standards for wood stoves, wood smoke contains particulate matter, which causes an array of adverse health impacts. Acknowledging those harmful impacts, EPA recently proposed to strengthen the national ambient air quality standards. And it documented a causal relationship between particulate matter exposure and mortality and cardiovascular effects. Multiple studies also confirm health impacts of particulate matter exposure, including cancer rates, dementia rates, and childhood lung functions. For this reason, many cities, including New York City, have started requiring commercial pizza, bagel, wood-burning shops to minimize their wood smoke emissions. New York just required them to reduce their wood smoke emissions by 75% by using what they called off-the-shelf filters. The applicant, the property owner and the business owner write and say that they can't find methods to minimize the smoke. And I think if anybody just searches the internet, they can find it. I also just want to show two photos that for some reason didn't transfer and get into your books. This is a picture of the smoke chimney, and you can see by how black the smoke is around that chimney. And that is what is coming out of, or where the smoke is coming out of. The other thing I wanted to show, and unfortunately this is sideways, but there's a question. I live around the corner from Felino's wood-fired pizza in Burlington. They have this, which I think is an electric static air cleaner on top of their wood-fired pizza vent. And I can tell you, I've never smelled any smoke or odors from them because they do this. And then that's what all we're asking for here is for the owner of Myers to install some sort of air cleaner. They don't want to put them out of business, but the smoke is dangerous, and it's not just odor, it's also health effects. So what we'd ask the board to do is to ask the zoning administrator to maybe take a number of visits to the site to determine whether or not there are, whether they can see and smell the smoke on the property and the surrounding properties, and then to the way your ordinance reads, if they make that determination, they can require the applicant, or excuse me, the business owner to come back in and seek a conditional use approval. And if they did that, then at that point, I think that the city could require them to put some air cleaning system on the wood stove stack.
Liam, I have a question for you.
Go ahead, Frank.
May I?
Yes.
Okay. I take your point that various authorities have found that wood smoke contains pollutants. Let's call that as a given. But the performance standard says all discharge or emission of potentially dangerous or offensive elements. Let's call wood smoke something that contains potentially dangerous or offensive elements, shall be subject to the requirements of all applicable local, state, and federal regulation. Are you aware of any local, state, or federal regulation that's being violated?
Well, the local regulation would be your performance standards, which I believe
But our performance standards depend on a violation of local, state, and federal regulations. Do you know?
Well, there are a number of other possibilities. They're visible. There should not be disclosed. That they're not be discharged into the atmosphere from any source at any time, any air pollutant in excess of this specified darkness standard, which I don't understand. But that, and then the last sentence: visible emission of any kind at ground level past the lot line of the property on which the source of the emission is located are prohibited. And
well, that's at ground level. You haven't testified to that yet.
Well, I haven't, but
no one else has either.
My clients will, in a moment, if will be able to testify to that.
You're saying that the smoke that rises. Hang on a minute. You're saying that the smoke that rises from the chimney on top of the building is visible at ground level?
Well, it comes back onto their property, which is uphill, and
at ground level.
At ground level. I'll let them speak to that. I have not witnessed that at ground level.
So, but let's come back to pollutants and specifying any local, state, or federal regulation that's violated, because that's the standard that's incorporated into our performance standard. So can you specify any local, state, or federal regulation that is violated? Yes, no?
I can't.
Thank you. All right.
That, but
all right. Now, having
odors, though, the smoke is.
All right, so now hang on a second. We're moving from pollutants.
One at a time.
We're moving from pollutants to odors now, right? We've given up on pollutants because there's no violated state, local, or federal regulation that we can specify. So we're done with pollutants, and we're going to hold an abeyance pending testimony on ground level darkness, right? Technically, but now we're moving to odors. All right, you can speak to odors if you want, Liam. If you want.
Well, I'd let at this point I'd let both Bob and Kathy, whoever wants to talk about their experiences living there since this business started.
Okay, well, it'd be good to focus it on the performance standards as they read. That would be helpful.
Okay. So are we going to move to Bob and Kathy? Are you done, Liam?
Yes, I wanted to provide that background and then
Thank you.
let them testify as to the odorous gases and the smoke.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you, Marla, did you get a chance to show these folks the little video?
No, I can do that now if you'd like. Would you like me to show the short one or the longer one?
The longer one, I mean, maybe you can speed it up a little. It's 4 minutes of just pictures of smoke emanating.
All right.
I think it would be good to show everyone.
Let me pull up the longer one. Oh, I saved it to my local because I was afraid it was going to crash. Hang on. Okay. Oh, don't start yet. Wait. Sorry, Bob. I feel like this is very amateur hour. I'm not used to running the screen. Marty usually does that. All right. Here we go.
So,
Looks like I cannot make it go faster, but
well,
I
that's
can
fine.
skip
I
around.
can narrate over it.
Okay.
So, the dates are on these pictures, and from our house you can see the smoke. The smoke isn't necessarily the visible smoke is not necessarily coming onto our property, but the smoke, the residual of the smoke is coming onto our property. So this started in April before the leaves were on the trees, and we could see it more. And as the weather got warmer, and if there's a light wind coming from the west, this doesn't happen every day of the week, and that's one thing I was very explicit when I wrote the letter to Marty was, depending on which direction the wind is blowing is when we get affected. It doesn't happen, it may not happen for 2 weeks. Last week it happened 3 days when the weather was 80 degrees, we couldn't open our windows because the smoke, there it is, that smoke is blowing right to my house. And we are uphill, so we're probably, my yard is probably 10, 12 feet above this parking lot, and my house, my first floor is another 10 feet above that. So that smoke, and more importantly, the odor, we cannot keep the windows open on these beautiful summer days. And part of the problem is the wind changes directions and might be coming from north. All of a sudden it's coming from the west. And we've got this odor in our house. And when the other restaurants were there, once in a while we would smell a little tomato sauce, a little garlic bread, maybe a burger, but some fried chicken, but never to this extent that we have to deal with this. I mean, there are multiple scrubbers on the market. They're not inexpensive, but for the amount of bagels they sell, it's probably 2 cents a bagel. And why I should have to, my wife, my neighbor, my 2 tenants, why we should have to deal with someone else's issue. It's already cost me a couple $1,000s between filing this appeal, having to hire an attorney, and we're probably not done. And how am I going to be compensated for the loss of my property? So we have not been able to use the yard multiple times. It's frustrating. Mm-hmm. And we raised this issue in February. The owner and the landlord totally ignored us, and the letters that they've written to my attorney, it's my problem to fix. I didn't create the problem. I didn't put a hole in my roof. And in my mind, they changed the use of the property. They went from burning gas to cook their food to installing a wood stove. And I think it's a change of use of property. It should have been notified, but that's another story. And on their submission with their the paperwork from their oven manufacturer says that thing should be cleaned once a month. That thing is filthy. That is all creosote. So it's just doing that. Where's all the smoke going? It's going in my house. It's going to Mr. Larkin's apartment building, which is amazing that he doesn't want something done. I don't know how many units are in that building, 20, 24? They've all got double hung windows. That smoke's going right in there. When and people probably don't want to complain because they have no other place to live. So I'm done with my rant.
Don, can I weigh in?
Go ahead, Mark.
Okay. So I think I'm hearing what everyone's saying, and I heard Frank's comments. And I think one thing that's happening tonight is I guess we're kind of getting off the purpose of the hearing. I'm hearing everything, and I'm not disagreeing with the appellant, but I'm just wondering in terms of what our discharge is for tonight in hearing this, because it's not whether there exists a violation, but whether there existed a violation at the time that Marty made his determination. Now, and in that regards, I would say, it seems as though there wasn't because he wasn't able to determine it. And that's a separate issue it should be the crux of it, but that's a separate issue to the additional testimony we've gotten from the appellant with this video, and as well as my own personal interpretation of the regulations and the performance standards would say, if something does potentially have the, exists the potential for destruction of odors or noxious fumes, then a secondary, device needs to be implemented. So I'm just wondering how, from a procedural standpoint, how do we deal with the appeal and then whether or not there actually exists a violation, and if Marty can take a different interpretation based on the evidence presented tonight, and require the secondary device to be installed. Because I'm sitting here at home, I just Googled it. There's quite a few different devices you can put in line with wood burning ovens and restaurants, wood-fired ovens for pizza, bread, essential. It seems to be a pretty common thing. I don't know the cost associated with it, but that's not our purview either. So
I think none of that presents a real difficulty. We have enough evidence in front of us. I don't think. I think if Marty was there one day and detected nothing, I think that's inadequate. As the appellant said, it depends on which way the wind blows.
I agree, but what is our discharge
and I think
tonight?
And I think his testimony is. I didn't see black smoke. I don't agree with that. I don't think it's a change of use. That's a red herring. It has nothing to do with this. I'm just looking at the simple language of the performance standard. There's an odor coming out. You're supposed to provide, reasonably interpreted, a device to present the odor. Apparently, there are practical devices. Apparently, there are practical devices. Marty was wrong. We tell the owner, unless you can show an impossibility or some incredible cost where we might have to reconsider.
I think we're really jumping ahead here.
You ought to fix it.
Right.
We haven't taken all the testimony.
Pardon?
We haven't taken all the testimony, right? So we've heard from Mr. Payson. We haven't heard from Kathy, who just seems to have walked away from the screen.
Well, it's not a hard issue.
We haven't heard from the property owner. We haven't heard from the business owner. And the board's responsibility in the case of an appeal is to determine whether an error was made by the administrative officer. So in this case, the decision that was made by the administrative officer was that there was no violation of land development regulations pertaining to hazardous conditions at the time of site inspection. So the board's responsibility tonight is to take all the information that they need in order to make a decision on that point. I think there's some subtleties in Marty's written testimony, Marty's email to the appellant that have not been brought up. I don't feel the need to iterate those tonight because they're already part of the testimony and you can deliberate on them during your deliberations. But I think it's important that before we decide that this is a closed, or before you decide that this is a closed hearing, that you hear from everyone and consider all the testimony.
Okay, so you're done with your testimony, Bob?
The only thing I would say is that someone has to monitor it. If you guys don't make a decision tonight, and who pays for the monitoring? I don't think I need to pay for it, but I think that the restaurant owner should personally. But it should be monitored. Come back once a week for 3 months. It's not. It doesn't. Like I said, it doesn't happen every day of the week. But it should. If you can't make a judgment tonight saying that they should put something in, at least have it monitored. So
we hear you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Would you like to provide us with your testimony?
Yeah, I also have a question. I'm not familiar with all these processes, but I'm just wondering why, when there was such a significant change to a restaurant operations by installing a wood-fired oven in the middle of a neighborhood, why we as neighbors so close to it were not informed properly. Like, we live busy lives, we have jobs, we work. I don't have much to do with that restaurant at all. I even when I walk by, I don't really walk by and look at it. It's that kind of thing. I'm just wondering why we were never informed and brought into and invited in to be able to weigh out what was being changed. Like it has been life altering for us. And we've lived here. We're going on our 10th year. We built it from the ground up. It's been a beautiful place to live. None of the restaurants prior were there was, like Bob said, once in a while you get a whiff of something delicious. But this has penetrated so deeply in our lives that we've been unable to enjoy our property the way it's built to be enjoyed and the way we've enjoyed for 10 years. And it's mitigatable. And that's what I'm so, we're neighborly here. All of us are neighborly. We all care about each other and we care about each other's health. And, some of the people aren't bothered by it because it's not penetrating into their home the same way because of the way their properties are built or the way they live their lives. A lot of them are living their lives in the backyard, but you can smell it when you go out to walk the dog. And it's sometimes so intense I have to turn around and come back home. So, my public enjoyment of our little neighborhood has been impacted in a way that I can guarantee there's not one of you sitting in the room right now would want that in your life.
Thank you. Is that it for you? Do you have anything else to add?
Oh, I could go on and on, but I'll leave it at that.
All right. Thank you, Kathy.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's move on to another interested party. Joe?
Adam, you want to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Adam.
Sorry, if you don't mind.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Either there or up front.
First out, just going through the language and things that have been submitted to Joe and I, that I think it's incorrect to say that we have been ignoring and not trying to deal with this. I've owned Myers just about 11, 12 years. We've been on Pine Street in Burlington for many years before that. Our niche, our product is a wood-fired bagel. I understand we went through the processes of filing the zoning to have this built all through the proper channels, I believe, of South Burlington. I'm not a resident here, so. And we did that, and we had the letter of notice up for many times. We have been in lease of that building a year. We have only been in operation since April. I know the lawyer said that we've been in full operation for 365 days. That is not true. This has been going, just starting in April. And he had brought up that, they did submit, even before we lit a match or had a piece of wood burning, their concerns, and it's certainly validated, that any burned product expels any type of particles, whatever you call it. I can research and provide many articles on natural gas burning and how in commercial operations of kitchens, they're slowly pushing and converting to electrical use of griddles and things like that, and ovens, because of the spinoff of natural gas. There's no good expellant of any type of thing that's burning. Notes that I'm curious about too, does South Burlington require permits for residents for having a fireplace? A wood burning stove to heat their home? Is wood allowed to use as an energy source to heat a home in South Burlington? If someone puts a fireplace, do they have to submit a permit and tell their neighbor when they do that? Because that is going to be doing the same kind of consequence there. The original complaint, and hopefully the videos will even show that too, smoke emanates, but it begins to disperse. So it's not, in my opinion, cluttering up, and we have to wave your hand, and you can't see like you're at a campfire, and it's all engulfing everyone around them. It's the smell and odor of the fire that is what I believe is the primary concern and complaint here. And in all the other language that we'd received prior to this, it was the odors and smells. And that is where our search in speaking and what I had submitted, speaking to 4 different chimney service companies around the state of Vermont, and working with Avonda Air Systems, who did our systems, and they've done many other commercial properties about this. How can we eliminate the smell and odor of wood burning? And all of them said there really, in their mind, isn't for the smell. There's smoke scrubbers and things like that, but the smoke, you can stop the dispersion of the black gray of the smoke itself, but the smell of the smoke will still exist, they said. So yes, you can do that, but it is not going to stop the smell of a wood burning, in their opinions. The other part too that I went, because it was brought up in the notes from their lawyer, of how Felinos was made to do this. I spoke to the owner's son about, we get along friendly, we're competitors in the sense of food products and things, but he was very open to me that they've never had a complaint prior to or during since they opened in Burlington, and the item on top of the picture that he showed earlier is a fan to help disperse the smoke or any exhaust out. It's an exhaust fan. There's no filter or scrub process in that device that he showed the picture of on the top of Felino's. And they, with the city and all of their other locations, submitted what they're doing, and it was all held in line with what the local ordinance was in creating an exhaust system for their operation. Burlington, Shelburne, and Williston. And they've used a similar device there. In speaking to Avonda, I sent that picture to him. I said, Dan Knoll, who's one of the vice presidents of their operation division, I said, Dan, what is this thing? And that's what he said. It's an extra exhaust fan that just helps blow the smoke or exhaust out further. He said, by blowing it out, it may disperse those particles, and it may or may not help with some of the smell, but that's unknown. He says that it isn't designed for that purpose, to help eliminate odors or smells. And I know Joe and I, we talk every so often. Have you come up with anything? No. If everyone's saying they're finding this, Googling and these things that will eliminate smells and odors, Joe and I are more than happy to sit down and work together on doing this. We didn't come there to be a nuisance to everyone. Many of that neighborhood, I don't know anyone who lives there, they come to us and say how happy they are to have a place that's there, that's a different morning entity, somewhere they can go. Some people have said they've enjoyed that smell. Reminds them of campfires, and it can be, I can understand, it's certainly unpleasant for many, and being close to us, the dumpster, the gentleman who lives right behind our dumpster, I think, who's probably getting hit with a lot worse on these warm, humid days and things like that. So I just want some clarity on some of the things that have been said about at least mine, and speaking partially on part of for Joe and the Larkin group, that we are looking into this. We have been, and this is what we're coming up with, which really is anything, again, for the odors and smells portion of trying to eliminate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't know, do you have a question?
I don't want to hog it, but
Go ahead.
I want to get rid of it. Okay, look. The odor, I think, unless anyone can contradict me if they want, but I'm inferring that the odor is a function of the smoke.
I would completely agree.
So if we're agreed on that, then where the smoke goes, the odor goes. If you put the smoke somewhere else, other than toward the house of your immediate neighbor, then presumably that would constitute a secondary safeguard for your smoke and odor producing system. For example, if you had a device, a fan of some kind, that took the smoke as it came out of your chimney on your roof and blew it towards Shelburne Road, where there's already lots of smoke.
Exhaust
That
and
would
other
solve
things, yes.
the gentleman's problem. Isn't that a viable solution? That, I mean, I think
would
this is a
completely-
time killer that we shouldn't be.
I agree.
And I think you ought to fix it. You know, and that sounds in principle kind of easy. Whether the device exists or not, I don't know, but it should, and it should be not that hard to fabricate. I will lend you a fan to put on your roof to blow the smoke towards Shelburne Road, and then he will have fewer odors in his house. And then when he comes back and says, but I smelled it once out of 412 days, I won't listen to him.
Okay.
But first put the fan up. By fan, I don't know necessarily whether I mean a fan. I mean some kind of air-moving system.
Sure.
That puts it in another direction. Can we do that?
Again, with what Felinos is using as a dispersion device for the exhaust, and that it is. If you have a 20-mile-an-hour westerly wind, once that blows that up beyond 10 feet, it may push it back towards his area again. And if you saw in the pictures, we even extended the height of our chimney an extra 4 feet over the original idea to help with getting it higher up and out of the way of everything.
Excuse me. We're really not here to problem solve.
Okay.
I mean,
I was just
think
answering
it's
his
great.
question.
I
Sorry.
think. Let me finish, please. I think what we're here to do tonight is to determine if there was a violation. And this is probably important problem solving, but we're not here tonight to solve the problem.
I think there was a violation.
Oh, well, we can talk about that in deliberation.
Yeah.
But I'd also like to see the
testimony.
problem solved.
I know you would, because that's the kind of guy you are, Frank, but I think it's getting late. We have one more witness to hear from, and thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Joe.
Sure, thank you. I don't have much more to add other than I just want to make sure that it's understood. The communication, it wasn't intentionally ignored. I thought we were communicating effectively through attorneys and through Adam. I hope our reputation is one of being responsive and caring and thoughtful. So I don't, that reflection is not one that I think is accurate, but we're here tonight to sort of support the process, and we will take direction as given.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think that's it for witnesses.
So the board now can give everyone the opportunity to sort of go back and respond if they need to. I think that, Marty, if the board has additional questions for any of the people who made testimony, or if they just want to make any statements in response to other testimony.
So this is a time to give anyone who's testified an opportunity to, go ahead, Liam.
Do you want to go in order again, please?
Maybe you should, you're much better at this than I am.
I'm only because I'm looking at the cheat sheet. So I would start in the same order again. So start with Marty. Do you have anything to
Okay,
respond?
Marty, do you have anything to add?
Move on.
I don't know.
Okay, thanks. Liam.
Oh,
you're muted.
Sorry, Liam. I muted everyone because we had a little bit of a problem, and then now I have to let you unmute. There you go. You should be able to unmute now.
Just very briefly, I appreciate Frank's comments. Bob, we tried to work with the operator and the owner for a number of months. We would greatly appreciate if they just start trying, as Frank says, put the air disperser on there and see what happens, and then, I think that might solve much of the problems. So, we'd just like to see something happen.
Sure. Okay, thank you, Liam. Bob.
Second what Liam just said.
Okay, thank you. Kathy?
Yes, and I can't emphasize enough having smoke blowing in your house on a fairly regular basis, how oppressive it is. And there has to be some sort of mitigatable way of doing that beyond just blowing the smoke in a different direction.
Okay, thank you. And Adam?
Again, we will continue, and I'll speak to more people about an air dispersion type system that could be used for this.
Okay, thank you. And Joe?
I will pay for it.
Okay. 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 Now, board members, do you have any questions to help when we deliberate, to help you make a decision? Do you need any more information, or do you think we have enough information to decide whether a violation was committed?
I have enough information.
You, okay? Okay. John, is that a yes?
I said I'm good.
Okay, good. All right. I have enough information, I believe. So,
I don't believe there are, oh, actually, there are quite a few members of the public, so you can take public comment.
okay, we're going to take public comment now.
So again, I have everyone, so they cannot unmute themselves. So either wave at me through your video or raise your virtual hand if you would like to be unmuted online. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. I'm not seeing anyone waving at me virtually or with a camera, so I guess there's no additional public comment.
William's waving.
Oh, Liam's waving. Liam, stop muting yourself. My goodness, I keep having to unmute you. Where'd you go? MSK asked to unmute. Okay.
I just wanted to note for the record that I forwarded the 2 emails from the neighbors that I thought had been already sent in. So I just want them to be part of the record.
Thanks, Liam. I'm not sure what the construction is of that when it's forwarded by someone. It's still certainly testimony, but I wonder if it becomes your testimony even though it was written by someone else. But we'll figure that out with our attorney.
If you look at them, they both thought they had addressed something to you, and I just copied it and sent it on. That's all.
Yeah, I saw that. It doesn't look like you have the original email. It's just the text of it. So I was just curious what happened. Anyway, I will make sure the board gets them.
Okay, thank you.
So, any public comments emerging? Kathy? Was
Kathy,
it
did you
Kathy?
have
yes.
something to say?
Yeah. Yes, I just wanted to, not that it's even has any bearing at this moment, but I did forget to mention that we have great concern about the expansion of hours at the business behind our house that already pours smoke into our house most of the day. Even hours after the restaurant is closed, the smoke is pouring into our backyard still. Today, it was so bad. And that they'll be burning until, 9 or 10 at night or whatever, once they add pizza. So now we'll have burnt pizza to live with at night. So we really have deep concern about these things. And I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Excuse me, are
Thank
you
you.
testifying that there was smoke at ground level?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. It sometimes penetrates right out to the street. It penetrates through our entire driveway, our front porch. It nails our back deck. We can't use it. I've gone downstairs. We have dogs. We sometimes I can't even stay outside with the dogs. I end up having to take her for a walk, and she's a really old lady dog, so sometimes I have to carry her. But it just has made it so our life just isn't the way it should be for what we built our home to be like and what we were used to living like. So
Sure. Thank you.
thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions before we?
Okay, so once we close, there can't be any new testimony. I can't take any new neighbor letters. I can't take any new videos. So once we're closed, the board has only the information that's been submitted until now. Okay.
I'm hearing that they're good with that.
Okay.
So do we need a motion to?
I'll make a motion that we close AO 2301.
Thank you, Mark.
Second.
Thank you, John. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, we will deliberate at a later date and be back in touch.
Marla, I have a question. If the parties should get together and say that they've solved their problem, could we just treat this matter as moot?
No.
No.
I don't think you can withdraw an appeal after the hearing's closed.
Still trying to
think you
solve the
could,
problem.
I think you could withdraw an appeal up till we started tonight, but I don't think you can. I don't know. I could ask. If it becomes relevant, I will ask the question of our attorney.
I suggest the parties just try to solve their problem. 'Cause I
Now,
know
keep
how
in
I'm
mind, this
voting.
is an appeal of the administrative officer, not of the property occupant, right? So it's a
Right.
decision
If they solve
on,
the problem,
If they solve their problem, then we don't have a problem.
right.
Okay, it
All
is
right.
10 o'clock, and that is closing time for us.
do you want to do minutes briefly?
I didn't see
From
any minutes.
September.
see
Oh,
minutes.
you're right. Yep.
So
we're not in
thank
there.
you
Placeholder.
very much. I know it's
Thank you.
late.
Thank
Thank you for your patience. Good night, everyone.
All
Good
right.
night.
Thank you.
So we'll call the meeting ended at 10:00, and I will try to stop the meeting. See if I can find that. Hang on, not stopped yet. Okay, done.